We're out of tune, folks. Do I even have my phone? I do. Sometimes I put my phone away when streaming, so I don't get distracted by all the people trying to text me and tell me how great I am. Can you talk about the history of Qatar? I know nothing. A little bit. We'll talk about that a little bit today. I'm not an expert, but... Lol, I called that kid stupid on your Twitter post who said China is capitalism and got banned for targeted harassment. Whoops. Yeah, that'll happen, I guess. Sounds like Elon hasn't really brought back free speech, huh? Not allowed to talk about China? Eddie, I'm watching the World Cup while watching you. Very cool. Yeah, I'll just commentate all the World Cup matches, you know. I don't know anything about football, soccer, but I'll talk about the politics. Not me watching this at work. When do most people not have work for Thanksgiving? Most of y'all, is that a thing? I feel like most people have the holiday itself off. I'm off. Yesterday was our last day. First time I have time off for the holidays. Wow, congratulations. I'm sorry that you've never gotten time off like that before. That's capitalism for you. Yo, Eddie, haven't been able to tune into the stream in forever. Will the reading guide on origins be resumed soon? I always share your guides on imperialism, state and rev to any baby leftists I meet online and in person. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you do that. Or I'm glad you find those to be useful. I will say, obviously, there's a lot of useful, accessible Marxist content out there for new leftists, but if people are asking how to get into theory, those are the places that I point them. The book guides and reviews that I did for State and Rev and Imperialism. And the other book that I point them to, because it was a good book for me in understanding like what Marxism is, or dialectical materialism, was Origins by Engels. But I haven't, right after I started filming the Origins reading guide, or I started filming the Origins reading guide right after I did it for our Patreon book club. So I had to teach Origins for our Patreon book club, which we don't do anymore. We have Patreon meetings, and you can still support us on Patreon, but it just became too much work for me to plan a book talk every week. But I figured since I had already done it for Patreon, I would turn it into a YouTube series. And now I just haven't finished doing that because wrestling season hit right after I started doing it. I got distracted, and now it's just like half of a series sitting there. But I could totally do that because I've read Origins like 3 or 4 times now. It's just a matter of me deciding when to do it. And we've mostly been focusing on the streams and just random TikToks, but eventually we will. And now that you bring it up and say that you've been showing people the other reading guides, you know, I feel like it would be worth my while to finish that. Long answer. Work 3 9-hour shifts, get a half day tomorrow. Wow. Solidarity with you, comrade. This is why we're socialists, huh? So is your boss super mad there were people who disagreed with you on the internet? Yes, I've lost my job. I'm gone forever. I'm no longer allowed to work anywhere in America. Communists shouldn't be allowed to work anywhere. All good. I used to work direct care, so we had to work. Now I'm a nurse, so they don't want to pay us holiday overtime. It's New York Commie from TikTok, by the way. Oh, what's up, New York Commie? I didn't know you, or maybe I did know you worked as a nurse. But very cool. Yeah, I was actually just writing something about that yesterday, not for Midwestern Marks, but for class. Um, what the assignment I was doing was from the perspective of a healthcare administrator. Say your CEO contacts you about the budget, and how do we, make more money and spend less money, especially now that there's less government assistance coming in post pandemic. But healthcare costs have remained really high, as has the demand for healthcare after the pandemic. And the primary complaint of employers was that they were hiring a lot of temporary labor and paying a lot of overtime hours. And there were a lot of nurses and essential staff quitting because not only had their jobs become more intense, more difficult, but they were also getting these ridiculously long hours. And our job as a healthcare administrator was to find a way to cut down on people's overtime hours so we can pay them less. I'm like, this is so messed up. I always have to doing my assignments is always so weird. It's always so weird. I'm like, maybe our hospital. And then there's another problem where, which is just a general problem in the healthcare system, even before the pandemic, was there's more and more specialists and more, highly paid, highly educated medical professionals and less nurses, less essential staff and employees that keep the facilities actually running, the providers actually running, especially in rural areas. Over the past few years, there have been over 100 hospitals that have shut down in rural areas because it's no longer profitable. And they're understaffed. They don't have the correct staff to keep it running. And it's like, this is the fault of capitalism. This is people chasing after the lucrative medical professional career because it pays better than, being a nurse, which is essential and which will provide healthcare to places in rural areas. But we act like we have to obey this dictatorship of the market. We pretend like the market is holy and good and like it's not screwing over working people and people in agricultural areas and rural areas. It's absurd. I mean, healthcare shows it more than anything. The market should not be involved with healthcare at all. Healthcare should be distributed and supplied based on need. And it should be preventative, not just treat symptoms. Momo, finally, Eddie is back. Missed you, Eddie. Hope you've been good. Thanks, Momo. I missed you too. Hope you've been good. I've been good. We just the streams now, I can't promise, more than every Wednesday. I can promise pretty much every Wednesday unless it falls on like Christmas or something, or something where I'm traveling, but then I'll make it up another day of the week. Oh, MFG, you lost your job for real? No, I did not. I was just kidding. Thank you for being concerned. I hope you kept your job. That's so silly. Yeah. No, I mean the recent guy who attacked me was a known scammer. We can actually talk about that. That's on the very top of my list of things to talk about today. The first thing I want to talk about was make sure you're subscribed if you're not, or make sure you share and like the stream. It was our New Year's resolution goal to hit 40,000 subscribers on YouTube before the end of the year. I've been busier than I expected and unable to post as much as I wanted. And, for whatever reason, our TikTok just grows faster than all our other social media platforms. But we've still gained a lot of subscribers, even though we are probably not going to hit that 40,000 goal. If we can hit like 27,000 or even 30, if something really, really pops off, that would be great. So share, like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff. People have been getting unsubscribed, unfollowed from our TikTok account, including myself. My backup account keeps getting unfollowed from my main account. I'm like, how many people has this happened to? Because sometimes sometimes our followers will just randomly go down, and it always goes up in net, but people are getting unfollowed. Anyways, this week, speaking of TikTok, I got doxxed, kind of, basically doxxed. The person shared my private Facebook page, which I've never shared or promoted. It's, on private, so you can't really see anything except my name. And then someone used that to find my parents and message my mom something really mean, which was the worst thing that came out of this. It's like, y'all are really showing your true colors. You really care about Iran and the people in Iran by yelling at my mom on Facebook. But anyways, the person who came after me is basically this guy who weaponizes social justice issues to build an audience. So he finds, whenever there's a hate mob attacking someone, he like throws oil on the fire and then literally like comes after their job. And usually he does it with really, really bad people. I don't know how I got on his radar. I think probably just because I was talking about Iran, and he really likes to weaponize stuff going on in Iran to attack people. But so he called for them to come for my employment, share my personal Facebook page, and oh yeah, that was the other thing he shared. Sorry, was where I work. So it's not like he shared my address, but then he called for people to fire me, and then teamed up with or get me fired, and then teamed up with some other guy who has tried to get me fired before. But most people saw through them. Most people saw through their garbage, largely because, like I said, the guy who did it was leading it up. His name's that Dinesh guy. He's basically a known scammer, and known to not really care about the issues he's talking about, weaponizing social justice issues. So if you check out this account, I don't know who this guy is, Feud Junkie. I just happened to find him when I was doing research on Mr. Doxman, that guy Dinesh. But like, here's an example. This is the best example of something he's done. He created a GoFundMe and said that he couldn't make it to work. He couldn't pick up his kids or whatever. I can't remember. He gave some sob story about his car's engine dying. And this Feud Junkie guy had his friend who was a mechanic like take a look at the video and basically debunked it. He was like, that guy's car isn't what he's saying is wrong with it in the GoFundMe isn't what's actually wrong with his car. I think he just probably unplugged the battery, I believe is what they said. So he builds an audience. He's got 1.5 million followers on TikTok somehow, and then he just milks them for money with things like GoFundMe grifts. And now with the most recent controversy with me, and this is what helped a lot of people see through his grift, he immediately put out a mug on his merch store called Eddie's Tears. I completely forgot to put it in the links for today's show. I don't know how I forgot that, because this is the best part of the story. Like, this is the only reason I'm talking about it on stream, because this is hilarious. That guy Dinesh merch. Okay, here we go. So this is the guy's merch store. This isn't within like a day or two of doxing me. He releases this mug related to the incident. There it is, Eddie's glossy mug. Which, what an honor, Like, the fact that the reactionaries who come after me are literally putting my name on their merch and promoting me, and they think that I'm so cool that somebody's gonna like buy a mug with Eddie's Tears on it and bring it to work, and then their coworkers are gonna be like, who's Eddie? Why aren't you drinking his tears at work? And then you're gonna have to explain to them that Eddie's a Marxist TikToker, and you bought a mug about him because he said some things you didn't like about Iran. Yeah, LMAO, who's going to buy it? I don't know. I saw someone saying that on Twitter. Like, imagine someone asking you why you have this and having to explain it to them. I almost bought one. I just don't want to give this guy, one, money, but 2, mainly my address, because he does dox people. But here's what he says. Did you just deny the genocide of my people by quoting Western media outlets like Newsweek instead of listening to the Iranian people regarding 15,000 Iranians? So he's accusing me of quoting Western media outlets like Newsweek instead of listening to Iranians. Now, this doesn't make any sense to anybody who was following our back and forth, because what this guy attacked me over was debunking an article from Newsweek. Newsweek put out this article about 15,000 Iranians being sentenced to death. The article was proven false. They retracted the article, said it was false after a bunch of celebrities shared it. I responded to some page on TikTok that was sharing the fake article with their millions of followers.
15,000 Iranians will be
said it was fake, and then this guy doxed me, right? That Dinesh guy. He's like, Eddie is denying, that the Iranian government is authoritarian and that they've killed people and that they've committed abuses. Therefore, contact his employer and get him fired. And he also said, I'm not debating you on this, which is hilarious, because of course you're not debating me on this. You don't have any argument whatsoever, So I was debunking a Newsweek article and saying this Western propaganda article from Newsweek is harmful to the Iranian people. This could get Iranian people killed. The U.S. is keeping sanctions on Iran. They're trying to foment regime change in Iran. They've been trying to forever. Those sanctions get people killed. They've launched drones at Iran that have gotten people killed. And this is just more regime change propaganda from Newsweek to try and get Americans to hate Iran and be okay with violence towards them. And then this guy who doxes me says I'm quoting Western media outlets like Newsweek, when the whole point of my content was to say that the Western media outlet Newsweek was wrong, instead of listening to the Iranian people. Maybe he's saying, I shouldn't listen to Newsweek when they retracted their own article. Maybe they falsely retracted their own article. And it's actually true. I don't know if that's what he's saying, but it's such a perfect example of, what a lot of these liberal democratic influencers are. Like, they don't care about the issues at all, to the point where they won't even, they can't even follow a coherent argument or a coherent narrative. They just throw buzzwords at the wall, and then try and build a following online, build their profile online, which eventually leads to merch sales and things like this. So that happened. It was weird. I hope it doesn't happen again. It probably will. Oh, here's the video, by the way. Here's the original video, so in case anyone hasn't seen it. Let me know how the audio is.
being arrested in protests are now facing the death penalty.
Sir, I'm sorry to bother you, but this is misinformation again. I know that a post went viral about the Iranian government recently on multiple platforms, but the story was later taken down because it was found to have no real evidence. The Iranian parliament did call to crack down on the protesters and teach them a lesson, but it didn't call to execute thousands of them. One protester was convicted of the death penalty after setting a government building on fire. So criticize the Iranian government for sure, but please do so in a way that's based in fact, and let's try to stop disseminating fake news stories that have been disproven to a high volume of people. And the real problem here is that this video gets hundreds of thousands of views, but my video explaining the truth is going to get a fraction of that. The only option is for News Daddy to read Lenin.
15,000.
So that's me quoting a Newsweek article instead of listening to the Iranian people. When I debunked a Newsweek article being read by a white British kid on TikTok. Like, it makes no sense. Anybody who can't see through it, I don't know what to tell you. And also, no, it looks like Dylan Page actually took his video down. So props to him. It was up freaking forever. I'm sure he saw what happened to me and was like, whoops. I kind of created this. He didn't create it, but I don't want to give you guys any ideas, but the line "Eddie, are you okay?" from Michael Jackson's "Smooth Criminal" would also work for merch. Oh my gosh, that would be something else. Something else. We still have a merch store. I don't even know if people use it. I never check it. I never, ever, ever promote it. This is the first time I've talked about it in forever. Someone hit us up and was like, "Hey, we're like a worker-owned co-op business. Do you guys want to team up and do merch?" Oh, it looks like our merch store is gone. Yep, it looks like this domain has expired. Yeah, the people we teamed up with to make merch, it looks like they went out of business. So we no longer have merch. But one day, maybe. I'm sorry that happened to you, Eddie. It's all right. You come after the worst people in the world, you get retaliation from the worst people in the world. And it's just the same. Like, people in my family or people close to me see this happen. They're surprised by it. And I'm like, well, they blatantly lie through the media, right? They blatantly lie about people that I respect and that I like and that I listen to. They lie and smear anybody who goes against them. So why would they not do it to me and Carlos, right? And it's proof that we're doing the right thing, because every one of our heroes has been attacked like this. So. Canada's World Cup match today is distracting me. I don't even know who they play. I haven't been following it. Hope you didn't get in trouble. I didn't. We're good. So should I go to the World Cup story since that's what people are talking about? I gotta go get some water first. I'm struggling without my agua. I shall be back. Sorry that took so long, folks. I also had to pee. Whoa, my chair just almost broke. How'd we gain more followers when I left? Or more viewers? You guys just don't want to see me, huh? Make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you're new to the stream. Where does Eddie work? We got to get him fired. He works for Midwestern Marx? Oh, exactly. That's why y'all should have to like the stream and comment. And if you can, give $1 to our Patreon. So that way Carlos and I can just do Midwestern Marx and be independent and not have to worry about losing our jobs. That's the dream, isn't it? Except all of our audience is actually working class or actually in, not to say, all of you are in desolate conditions or something, but our audience is actually of the working class, and a lot of them actually are struggling in the current system. So, and we don't want to, promote ourselves all the time and just be money grubbers constantly. But you can support us at Patreon if you want, or with super chats or whatever. Alrighty. Yeah, let's talk about Qatar. We're all poor, haha, literally. Not literally. Okay, so recently in Qatar, they've been holding the World Cup. Obviously, this has been hot news. The World Cup in general is a giant media event and a giant, spectacle. Great way for capitalists to make a whole bunch of money, similar to the Olympics. But this year, a lot of players have been wearing pride flags and have been wearing a lot of pro-LGBTQ patches or clothing or, whatever else bearing the flag to protest of the Qatari government and their, discriminatory laws against LGBTQ people. They don't allow like gay marriage. The critique that's been made of this is that, Qatar has an extremely exploitative system of labor and specifically migrant labor. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but the kafala system basically allows for Qatar to be a country built on almost exclusively migrant labor, immigrant labor, and it puts them in a situation of, borderline slavery, like involuntary servitude to the Qatari landlords. So we're going to talk about that in a sec, but here's Richard Medhurst's initial reporting on what's going on in Qatar. Oh, sorry. So I didn't finish what the critique of the Americans is. The critique is that they care about social issues, and trying to impose American cultural values on the countries in the Middle East or in West Asia. But they don't care about, exploitative labor practices or the way that Qatar aids imperialism, things like this.
Surprised to hear this from Piers Morgan of all people. So let me just play the clip.
Who is morally clean enough to actually host a World Cup? Are we? Are we the country that illegally invaded Iraq, which then started a 20-year reign of terror by ISIS? Are we morally clean enough to host a World Cup? I mean, I just think it's fraught with hypocrisy.
They're saying that, Qatar is not fit to host the World Cup. Right now, they're focusing on gay rights. The thing that I remember about Qatar, which was really controversial years ago already, was that they were using migrant workers to build the stadiums. They had all these people coming in from Bangladesh, from all over Asia to Qatar to build the stadiums, because you have to do this many years in advance. And they were taking their passports, so they couldn't leave. 6,500 migrant workers have died in Qatar since the World Cup was awarded. Everybody knew that they bought their way into hosting it, right? You have all these oil sheikhs who are running around just like throwing dollars into FIFA's pockets, which FIFA already, was corrupt as hell. And this is one of the reasons. It was so obvious. I understand, like, there are legitimate criticisms to be made of Qatar. I just made them for you as well. But I agree with Piers Morgan for once about what he's saying, that, you start saying, well, that country is not morally okay. Like, who are we to speak? If you want to judge our history, I think the UK has done a million things worse than Qatar and still does them. It's not that long ago. It's just a few decades that, gay people, homosexuals were still being oppressed in the UK. This is relatively new that you have progressive legislation that's been enacted in support of gay rights. But it's not that long ago that these countries, the UK, the US, were oppressing gay people. And now they want to turn around and point the finger at others after they gave them the thing. That's the root of the problem here. It's corruption. It's because these countries buy their way into these things. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, they want to portray themselves as these really prestigious, futuristic countries. And it's all from the oil money. The responsibility does not lie with the fans on who gets the World Cup. The responsibility lies with FIFA. If they actually care about these things, they care about gay rights, they care about migrant workers, their human rights, they shouldn't have given it to Qatar in the first place.
It's all from oil money and from the labor of those migrant workers, and obviously the two are deeply intertwined. But I don't know, Carlos gave me a statistic earlier, something like 80% of Qatar's population is migrants. And the way the kafala system works, or the way that it used to work at least, is, if your parents lived in Qatar, if you're a second generation Qatari, you have access to social programs, government social programs, basically, where you get a tiny fraction of the oil wealth. And then obviously there's the top dogs, these giant, ridiculous oil oligarchs, the richest people in the world, pretty much, who you hear Joe Rogan talking about all the time, actually. And this kafala system basically locks migrant workers into a contract with native Qataris, people who are benefiting from these social programs. And it makes those native Qataris basically their managers for the bosses, being the giant oligarchs, as well as their landlords. So they're managing the labor and owning the land, and that these migrant workers live on. So it's a middle class compared to the giant oil oligarchs, right? But it's still this oppressive, managerial, non-productive laboring class in Qatar. Yeah, and I mean, but that's not to say the working conditions for all native Qataris is great, or there aren't tons of exploited native Qataris, and if anything, it's a way to divide, the main productive workers in that region, in that country. You have these migrant workers and then native Qataris. You keep them divided by what they get from the government in terms of social programs, despite the fact that like 80% of the country is not from Qatar, and makes it harder for them to struggle against the giant oil oligarchs, see what they have in common. And, I have a special connection to Qatar because I had a bunch of buddies on my college wrestling team who joined the military. And obviously I keep them anonymous, but they joined the military for free college, and they were told they wouldn't be deployed, and they were lied to by the recruiter, and they got deployed to Qatar, basically just to guard the oil, to be the stewards of the oil that makes a lot of money for Western multinationals and those Qatari oil oligarchs. And probably to prevent an uprising as well, oversee that system of exploitation, that system of extracting labor value from migrant workers. So here's from the international, what's it called? The International something of Labor, the ILO, International Labor Organization. I don't know. It's some branch of the UN, but International Labor Organization. Yeah, it's a sector of the UN that was founded in the early 1900s. But this is how they recruit these workers. And there's, I don't know if all these UN reports about the kafala system are necessarily negative, but there's predatory recruitment practices. The working conditions are terrible. What's ironic about the World Cup thing is that a lot of these migrant workers actually died making the stadiums that these players are playing in. And the working conditions are notoriously horrible for these migrant workers who are, as I said, basically they're in a contract with their landlord and their manager, their employer. So, it's basically involuntary servitude, borderline slavery. They own where you live, what you do, control what you do, and they make the working conditions terrible, and they don't care if you die. So, it's not that protesting LGBTQ discrimination is a bad thing. But, these Westerners going into Qatar and saying, why don't you have the same political ideals that we do in the West? Why don't you have the same social values that we do in the West, the same cultural values that we do, and implement those into your system of governance? Why aren't those same people who are saying that talking about the migrant system, the kafala system, the workers who died making the literal stadium that they're playing in? It shows, I think it shows that it's largely performative in a lot of ways. The media is covering it like crazy. It's a really popular statement to make in the U.S. right now, at least in a lot of areas like California or whatever else, to make a pro-LGBTQ statement. And again, nothing wrong with that. But let's talk about the kafala system. Let's talk about the exploitative system of migrant labor. Let's talk about the people who are buried under the stadium that you're playing in because they died creating it. Eddie, I found this short TikTok that I find funny. Okay, I'll check it out. I don't know. What do people in the chat think of that? Do people find any of the criticisms of these athletes, of these Western athletes, to be homophobic? Like, is it homophobic to criticize this and say focus on the kafala system? Is it imperialistic to say that other countries have to adopt the same LGBTQ cultural values as us? I think it could go either way. It's a sensitive topic, but very interesting to think about. See if I have anything written about it. Yeah, I don't know. We never criticize countries for how they organize labor. And I agree with Richard Medhurst and Piers Morgan's critique too. Like, who then is morally pure enough to host the World Cup? Because we played the videos on our show like a week ago. About a week ago. I'm sorry. At least I didn't throw my hat. But we played literally about a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago, Hillary Clinton, Obama, and Joe Biden in like 2008 through 2012 saying they were against gay marriage. And that marriage is between a man and a woman. And marriage is ordained by God, and that should be the law in America. So as Richard Medhurst is saying, like, this isn't even something that we had in the United States a while back. This is something that had to be fought for by LGBTQ people in the U.S. They had to struggle for their rights. But, we're going to impose our values on other countries and criticize other countries for doing the exact same thing that we did for 100 years or whatever. So, I don't know. I mean, yeah, their views on LGBTQ is wrong, agreed, but showing up to the gates of the Cup with an LGBTQ shirt and getting turned away and then being shocked by it and making a video, yeah, right. Did it start out with a video? Is that how the protest started? Was it a video of like a fan trying to do it who got turned away and then the athletes started doing it, or what? I don't know. I feel like my fear is that there's ultimately people using it nefariously. Like, that's the thing. None of our criticisms of woke imperialism are like us being anti-LGBTQ or being anti-oppressed identity groups or anti-freedom. All of it is the fact that you have to recognize capital, and the capitalist imperialists are going to weaponize whatever they can. Whatever parts of the culture they can weaponize to make people support imperialism and capitalism and not fight in their own interest for socialism, they're going to use it. So if they can divide people with cultural issues and social issues that are covered by the media nonstop, they're going to do it. And if they think, having, pushing LGBTQ issues on, I don't know, if they think that using LGBTQ issues to get you to support the CIA is going to work, they're going to do it. And we've seen all these woke recruitment ads. It's not to say that LGBTQ people's struggles don't matter, but we have to be aware of how everything is going to be weaponized. Everything. And controlled opposition is something the ruling class has been doing in this country forever, meaning controlling people who are leftists, socialists, using them to promote non-leftist, non-socialist, destructive ideas. So, yeah. 100% use the Trojan horse, which is also why the world is rejecting LGBTQ movement as a whole, because they know it's the U.S. military. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing is this stuff like allowing the U.S. military and CIA to push these values on everyone else causes more, homophobia and resistance to it. And, like the Iranian Revolution, we're not just anti-Western exploitation and economic exploitation. We're anti-Western cultural values. We're anti the West imposing, any of their culture on us. And we're for having our own Islamic culture. But reactionary views are just used to distract from class consciousness. Damn right. I don't know what to make of all this. I just try and do my best to follow the Marxist analytical model used by Domenico Losurdo. Don't we all, Jacob? Aren't we all just trying to use that analytical model? Classic example of pink washing / purple washing. We must support social human rights worldwide, of course. But as communists, our critique must extend to economic rights. The Qatar critique is warranted, but Orientalist. I think you nailed it, Christian. I think you nailed it with that statement, to be honest with you. What's it called when they shift the focus onto race rather than class? Woke washing or identity politics, the weaponization of identity politics. That's what I call it. Okay, I kind of got to pee again, but let's cover one more story. This is part of a new section I like to call the world's most important news, a Marxist analysis of today. So I figure I go through all my favorite news outlets and all the mainstream news outlets and find the news from each week that I think is relevant to Marxists today, making a Marxist analysis of our world today. So today, article from Consortium News that caught my eye. Consortium News is a great investigative journalistic outlet. I believe they were founded by Robert Perry, who passed away. He's in Oliver Stone's movie Ukraine on Fire. Great movie explaining the current situation in Ukraine and what led to it, and U.S. and NATO involvement in it. So this is his outlet that has kept going and kept going strong after his death. But a wave of strikes has been rocking Britain. And this is, of course, largely in response to the sanctions on Russia that have stopped oil and gas flows to Britain. Although recently it was proved that Britain is still buying some oil from Russia secretly, despite the U.S.'s wishes. They're going to get a spanking from their daddy, the U.S., for buying some oil from Russia in secret. But of course, this oligarch-driven proxy war against Russia has been disastrous for the working people in Western countries. Prices on essential goods and have shot through the roof, as has the cost of things like heating your home. So the unions and the workers have been leading the struggle, been leading the charge against this, basically. Been leading the charge, calling for the politicians to start doing something about this. Not the Labor Party politicians, but the actual working class. And this is how it tends to work, because class struggle drives history, don't you know? So you have these workers' unions and these militant workers who are saying enough of this endless proxy war. Cut profits, not pay. Start doing things that are better for labor and better for the workers in this country, you lazy politicians. While the labor politicians are offering milquetoast solutions and going along with the U.S.'s wishes and continuing to put sanctions on Russia no matter how much it hurts working class people. And we have, similar to the fake socialists in the U.S., we have these pro-NATO socialists in the U.K. Who are in office, who are really no better than, the neoliberals. And they're saying, well, I know that things are tough for working people right now as I sit in Washington or wherever comfortably. I know that things are tough, but Putin is just really, 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 really bad. And we just have to keep sending weapons to the Ukrainian military And, even if that means neo-Nazi militias like the Azov Battalion, and we got to sanction the crap out of them. And you European countries, you got to go along with it too. I know the workers are starting to get mad and rise up. Just ignore them. You'll be fine. Bye-bye, Boris Johnson. So yeah, this is the clapback. This is the clapback from Ukraine. This is what socialists and economists have been saying is going to happen for a long, long time. Been pointing out the giant percentages of energy that countries in Europe get from Russia, or got from Russia before the war started and before the US pressured all the NATO member countries to enforce sanctions on Russia and isolate them from the world. And of course, having greatly decreasing the supply of commodities available is going to greatly increase the price of those commodities for people in the UK. And, a commodity like energy is something that's needed to get to work, drive to work, to heat your house. I've heard a common complaint of workers has been, I can't even afford to drive to work anymore. And our socialists in office are saying, yeah, I know you can't drive to work. I know you can't heat your home. I know you can't afford baby formula. But have you ever considered Putin bad? Putin bad, NATO good, keep sending weapons to Ukraine. Have you thought about that, working people? And people are getting sick of it, for real. People are getting fed up, as you see here, this wave of strikes, not led by the politicians, not led by the Labor Party, but led by the unions, led by the workers taking charge. And what's too bad, I was talking to my buddy just today, who's in a major union here in the U.S., which is actually a union that's been threatening strike and has been actually getting more militant and getting more fed up with the corporations because their conditions are just getting so bad. And he's like, he's always talking about how we just have no union education in this country. Workers don't know what their union's supposed to do. They don't know how it works. They don't know how the company works. And he actually made the comparison today. He's like, all my coworkers, when they go hunting and prepare their land to go hunting, they have extremely analytical minds. They become extremely smart, and they put themselves to their work, and they're great at it. It's amazing what they can do when they're hunting and what they put their brains to it. But then they don't understand how the union works at all, right? They hate their working conditions. They know their working conditions are messed up and that they're getting exploited and screwed by the boss, and that it's dangerous to be out there every day, and they're not following OSHA regulations and guidelines or whatever. But they don't know how to use this apparatus, the union, to fight and to use this to actually get benefits and gains. And, it's also much harder in the US compared to the UK to form a union. And, the UK has seen 40 years of neoliberalism and trickle-down economics too. When Margaret Thatcher came to power, it was around the same time as Ronald Reagan, and they were sort of the bearers, the heroes of neoliberalism. They kicked off this trickle-down economics idiocy. But it's still, in the UK, they're still much more in touch with their labor history and the history of their own class struggle than we are here in the US, than workers are here in the US, who a lot of them are tricked into Trumpism and conservatism and these silly things, hoping that, a demagogue like Trump will come along and make their lives better when they have a union right there that they could, get organized and start helping out and use to make their lives better. But again, it's much harder in the US than the UK to even form a union. In the UK, it's very easy, and there are people who will help you do it if you want to do it. In the US, we've had to fight, scratch, and claw just to organize a few Starbucks, and shout out to the Starbucks organizers in the service industry. Some of them were Midwestern Marx viewers, actually. Some of the people at the very first location. So, I mean, what an honor. That's just amazing. Shout out to them. But it was such a struggle, as with the Amazon unions. It was such a struggle, and these capitalists like Elon and them are so good at union busting. The laws have been rigged so much to prevent worker organizations and unions. So in the US, we're in an even worse spot than they are in Europe, I think. Even though Europe gets more of their gas and energy from Russia, we might be in an even worse spot because they actually have some sort of apparatus, some sort of way to collectively struggle and influence politicians. say, hey, Labor Party, wake the hell up. Your constituency is literally dying out here while you keep sending all our tax dollars to this proxy war in Ukraine at the behest of the U.S. You know, in the U.S., people are losing it. People are going crazy. But I don't know, they're turning on Tucker Carlson, because Tucker Carlson's criticizing the war in Ukraine and talking about how he cares about the working class, and Americans are like, oh, I guess I'm a Republican. I guess I'm a conservative because I want to be able to heat my house instead of sending weapons to the Azov battalion. It's like, we need to get back to class struggle. We need to get back to class struggle, forming worker combinations, using worker combinations to fight the bourgeoisie directly, educating workers who are organized in those worker combinations, getting them into the party. Not just educating them either, about how, about theory and about imperialism and how the world works. That's great. But people need like that detailed, meticulous education. Like, how do the unions work? What is the bureaucratic organization of the major unions in this country? What do they advocate for? Who's running them? Who are the administrators? Are they good or bad? Do they actually serve the workers? How active are the workers actually in their own union at every location? There's very little study of this done by socialists. There's a lot of talk about imperialism and neocolonialism and education about that stuff. And, this is a self-critique too. Like, we are more guilty of this than anybody. But we need to also talk about class and talk about, like, when the John Deere strikes were going on. We should have covered that even more. I went to the picket line and covered it, but I should have done an explanation of how the John Deere union works. I should have researched stuff like that, just to help workers, who might be viewing that educational content, who are working for John Deere, help them know how to use that union. Like, these practical organizing things are things we have to think about, if we actually want to enact change. And the CPUSA's organizing manual from like 1938, that's one of my favorite texts ever. It's just, goes over all the practical questions of organizing, things that should concern people who are actually out there trying to reach the unions, reach the working class, build community. But here's an example, kind of getting back to what this segment was talking about. Here's an example of an American that I saw on TikTok. This is Yahoo News. This is an American fed up with the economic conditions and what our government is doing about it or not doing about it.
I understand war is going on and this and that, but we got to think about our people first. My cell phone is disconnected because I can't pay the bill. I mean, it's just the everyday necessities that people take for granted. You can't afford them anymore. Honest to God, I have to say that ever since the Biden administration has been foolish with the money in the House, and I have never seen somebody pour billions of dollars into another country and not its own, that is clearly hurting. I understand war is going.
And this is why education about imperialism is important too, though, and connecting that education about imperialism to the class struggle, because she's so close. Like, she gets it. Things are bad here. We're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine. Why are we not investing any of that money in our own people? And what is wrong with Joe Biden? Well, when Biden got in office, that was NATO and the finance capitalists, the bankers and industrial capitalists who control Biden getting in office. The same people who overthrew Ukraine's government in 2014. So, people talk about how Biden's brain is melting and he has dementia all the time. Probably it doesn't matter. He's literally a puppet. He is literally a puppet of the ruling capitalist class, the finance capitalists, the political donor class. And they want war with Ukraine so they can threaten Russia. NATO, which we'll cover this article later, actually, in a recent summit, NATO said that their number one goal going forward is to destroy Russia and China. This is because Russia and China threaten the U.S. economically. They don't have the same neoliberal trickle-down system as us that allows Western multinationals to rob them blind. So the U.S. and NATO wants to destroy them. Joe Biden is a puppet of them. So no matter how much Americans and working Americans are suffering here at home, Joe Biden doesn't care because he doesn't serve them. Those aren't his constituents. His constituents are the bankers. His constituents are U.S. and Chase Bank. His constituents are the military industrial complex who have made millions and millions and millions of dollars off the conflict in Ukraine, just handed to them by the U.S. government, who then says they can't do anything about the price of gas being high, or about commodity prices being high in the U.S., or, about all our jobs being outsourced overseas. And people are seeing it, but you just have to give them that theoretical education. Like, this is capital. This is the reign of capital. Capitalist imperialism had already come about in 1917. This is just it running its course, and what we have to do is organize for the workers, for socialism. The majority. Okay, I was getting a little distracted there because I seriously have to pee so freaking bad. But I will return very soon. Well, I'll pull something up for y'all to watch, actually. I don't want to leave y'all with nothing. What should we watch here? What do we watch? I'm going to pull up a wrestling match. Yeah. Here, I'll just let y'all watch Greco-Roman wrestling highlights. How about that? This is what that means when he puts it down toxic. Jeez, I'm going to get a copyright strike here from Fort Minor's Remember the Name. If you wrestle, you've heard Remember the Name by Fort Minor about 800 million times in your life. All right, this is what I do, except not as well as these guys. So observe and then tell me how I can be as good as these guys, please. I'll be right back. How's it going, y'all? Are you enjoying Greco-Roman wrestling? Haas versus Eddie wrestling showdown. I am about it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Haas is probably bigger than me, but I believe that technique will win. Fury will win. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Colonialism is not just when white people mean. It's an actual historical era of particular state order, one that expands the state coercion on a basis of profit because states don't profit with capital. Very astute observation and explanation, Marxist saw. I like that. Thank you. This is an anecdotal point, but the only people I know personally who are in favor of sending money to Ukraine are people who are economically secure. Interesting point, though. It's largely true. And then, these liberals will just say, it's the Trumpers, it's the QAnon Trumpers who are eating up this Putin propaganda about the U.S. sending money to neo-Nazis and about them doing a coup in 2014. It's all Trumpers spreading Putin propaganda. Like, no, it's just working class people who are struggling, and who don't have any socialistic option to turn to, so they turn to Tucker Carlson or whatever, and they're tired of seeing Joe Biden send billions to Ukraine while they can't pay for gas or for their phone bill. Like, it's not that hard, libs. It is hard for libs because they just hate class analysis and saying anything that makes sense. All right. Moving on with most important stories in the world today. Obviously, we have Lula da Silva coming to power. And this is a conversation with People's Dispatch about how much power Lula will actually have as president, how much he'll be able to do. The current Congress in Brazil is very conservative. There's growing conservatism in Brazil, conservative sentiment in Brazil. There were protests against Lula coming to power, including like truckers, and people who should be in favor of Lula's Workers' Party. So that was sad to see. I saw the typical liberal account on Instagram, which is some account that just makes fun of liberals. It's like a Trump conservative. They were cheering on the protests by the right-wingers, by the Bolsonaro supporters. And it's like, you guys are just so lost. It's so sad. Because I know the person who runs that Instagram account is actually like a working class person. They post their work boots all the time. And they're of the working class, and they don't like the elites, which are really the oligarchs and, the Democratic Party, who are run by the oligarchs. So it's sad to see that American workers are looking at the right-wing protests by Brazilian workers and being like, screw the Brazilian Workers' Party. Why would we want anyone who fights for us? That's socialism and evil. I'm just going to complain about elites all day. But anyways, this is a valuable article. People want to read it. They talk about how to combat Bolsonaroism, very similar to like Trumpism, this sort of right-wing ideology that's captured the minds of a lot of workers, a lot of people who should be in favor of Lula and the Brazilian Workers' Party because they're literally freaking workers. But instead, they fall into reaction. No. So yeah, the socialist wave sweeping across Latin America has pretty much touched every corner of Latin America at this point. There's very few right-wing governments remaining. Lots of democratic socialists or straight up socialists. Of course, you have the ones like Gabriel Boric who are like, I'm a socialist, but Venezuela and Cuba are evil, and I'm going to help the U.S. do regime change, and Nicaragua too. So, but obviously it's better to have him in power than have some extreme right-winger. But now, we'll see how much they can actually do. Right? We'll see how much they can actually move towards socialism / anti-imperialism. Because obviously the main critique of the so-called pink wave in Latin America and the different waves of it over time is that you're extremely limited in what you can do when you don't have a full-on revolution that establishes a dictatorship of the proletariat. Even Venezuela, largely their revolution has come about through electoral means, although, the proletariat is armed and they have their commune system, and there was a revolution attempt in 92, and it's much more complicated than just saying, it was electoral and they just voted a socialist in office, like you could say about a lot of the countries today, like Brazil. Venezuela had a more transformative movement. But, it's argued that if you don't have that, if you don't have a bottom-up transformative movement, a move towards socialism that attempts to change every aspect of capitalist society, and abolish the core elements of capitalism, then you're not going to be able to do much, right? You're not going to be able to do much via the bourgeois political structure, the political structure that was designed under capitalism. It needs to be changed and adjusted so that it facilitates actually giving power to the workers. You need like commune systems or whatever, systems of direct democracy, Soviets, something for the workers to be able to directly control the government. And it's hard to implement something like that when you just, elect a Bernie Sanders type socialistic politician to office. So Lula in Brazil will be a great way to measure how much, these socialistic leaders elected are able to do, especially in a country that has tons of Bolsonaroism, tons of right-wing sentiment among the actual working class. So, yeah. Do you think it's better if Kurds separate from Iran? I don't know enough about it. I've heard mixed things, but yeah, I don't feel comfortable talking about it because I haven't researched it enough. Another one of the most interesting stories today, something that all Marxists should 100% be paying attention to, even though it may not seem like it at first glance. John Deere's profits have gone through the roof. There were supply chain delays going on that have calmed down. Sales have once again risen, and the company is expecting strong demand to persist, allowing them to make more and more and more money, which they can pay to shareholders quarterly, which they can hand out as dividends to shareholders. More money that's literally, there's like 2 or 3 John Deere factories in my town producing all this value day after day after day, all these manufacturers going in and using their hands and their brains to create all this valuable farm equipment that produces the food that all of us need to survive, that society needs to survive. And the value, all that value that they're creating every single day gets sold on a market, gets turned into money, and then gets handed to shareholders as dividends or used to help expand the company. And only a tiny, tiny fraction of that value created by those workers is given to them as wages. And that is why last year you had John Deere go on strike for like the first time in 25 years because they were trying to take healthcare benefits away. This company making record profits, giving record payouts to their shareholders, said, we no longer want to pay for your healthcare. We're only going to pay for 80% of it. Or something. Maybe they tried to go 50% of it, and then the workers threatened strike, and they tried to go up to 80% or something. But like, what absurdity! What absurdity! Like I said, I know the people in my community who are at the physical John Deere plants. And think about this: if there are John Deere plants or manufacturing plants in your community, there are people in there every single day creating that value, risking their health and spending time away from their families and away from doing what they would like to be doing, putting all their labor, all their time, all their energy into creating this farm equipment, which is necessary for the survival of humanity, of every single last one of us in society. And then they're paying millions and millions and billions of dollars created by those workers to people on Wall Street. People literally just sitting on their ass who have maybe never been in a John Deere manufacturing plant in their lives. People like Bill Gates, who now owns more farm equipment manufacturers and more farmland than anybody else in this country and probably anybody else on earth. You think he knows anything about farming or building farm equipment? No. But we've gotten to such an absurd point that this company, paying bagillions of dollars to shareholders, people like Bill Gates sitting on their ass in New York, as they pay billions of dollars to them, they're telling the workers, we can't pay for all of your health care. You know, if you get sick or if you get hurt on the job, you know, we just can't afford to take care of you. I'm sorry. Bill Gates needs $1 billion this quarter, right? Last quarter, we gave Bill Gates 0.8 billion. This quarter, we got to up that. You think we can pay for your daughter to have health care? You think we can pay for your kids to go to school? You think we can afford to pay for you to go to the doctor? No. You know how many shareholders this company has to pay billions of dollars to using the value that your labor creates? Like, it's absurd. So now even in the US, you know, where workers have largely been cucked by capital for the last 100 years, and where we have few labor organizations and few workers interested or engaged in class struggle, and unions have been busted for the last 40 plus years at least, really since the 1950s or the 1940s after World War II, and we had more wildcat strikes than any other time in US history. Even here in the US, people are getting sick of this and starting to rise up and starting to demand just the measliest things, right? The smallest things. Please, please give us health care. Please let us go to the doctor if we get hurt at our dangerous manufacturing job, making billions of dollars for people like Bill Gates. Craziness. Communist farm equipment can be held in the hands of the workers. Exactly. Cooperative farming. The workers in the U.S. already have co-ops. They already have these methods of sharing and cooperating that are, you know, the whole system of co-ops that, you know, almost all farmers engage in, especially all small or medium farmers to the extent that they still exist. That's a way of them saying, you know, the market doesn't work. The market doesn't work as well as it does for us to have this cooperatively owned entity that we can get some of our means of production from. So yeah, farm equipment. I mean, the reason I wanted to cover this story is, one, because we had the John Deere strikes in my area, and we had some viral videos about that, and we covered it extensively. I actually wrote an article about it, which I should have pulled up, but also, this is just something Marxists should care about. Like, farm equipment is very, very important means of production, right? They're a means of producing the food that we all need to survive, the means of subsistence. So John Deere, this giant company who owns the means of production, who owns the farm equipment, and the shareholders on Wall Street who really own John Deere and who really are siphoning that value created by the workers, it's important to pay attention to. It's important to pay attention to what John Deere and the other farm equipment manufacturers are doing and organize their workforces and think about how we could make their lives better under socialism, how we could bring John Deere ultimately to be worker owned. I might have done a couple articles on John Deere. Thousands. I should have searched my. Oh no, here it is. Why John Deere workers needed to strike. Oh yeah, they actually did go on strike. I might have said that they threatened strike, but they actually did strike. I went and stood with them on the picket lines. Like I said, I made a TikTok of it. But anyways, who profits from the labor of Midwestern workers? And, you know, in this article, I basically make the point that I just made. There's workers in the Midwest spending all day at a manufacturing plant making billions and billions of dollars for people in New York who have never been in a manufacturing plant. And then those people in New York are like, yeah, fuck you. We don't care if you have health care. Like, the absurdity of that, the absurdity of organizing society that way, you know, that is not a good way to organize production or a sensible way to organize production in the modern world. To just have the workers with no say working like slaves for people on Wall Street who have no idea how production even works, no idea how to produce what's valuable for, you know, all of society. I gotta stop whistling. You think that current labor movements are better off now than, say, 40 years ago? No. The 40 years of neoliberalism has greatly weakened workers' bargaining power. And that shouldn't be understated. Like I was talking about earlier, that was my point with comparing the US to the UK and how the unions and the workers are now demanding change in the UK and criticizing all the money being sent to Yahtzees in Ukraine, and all the and the UK is going along with the US's sanctions and not getting energy from Russia. In the US, we don't even have the capacity to do something like that, right? We don't have enough unions in the major industries. The workers that have unions are not connected to their unions at all. They're run by bureaucratic administrators who oftentimes, who almost never have any real conviction for trade unionism or for helping the working class. Workers don't even understand how their union works. There's been so much propaganda about unions that workers, some of them literally don't like their union because they have to pay union dues, and they don't realize that unions are the reason we have anything, the reason why, we have any kind of wage increases we get, or any kind of benefits like healthcare and things like that, come from class struggle by the organized working class, organized into unions. But they've been busted up and crushed for the last 40 years. It's hard to start one, versus in the UK, it's quite easy in comparison, at least. And I believe in the UK, the right to form a union and have a union is still protected by law, versus in the US, we have right to work states where it's like, no, you have the right to work, but you don't have the right to have a union. It's like, what the hell? How are we allowing this? So yeah, no, the US, the labor movement's in a worse state. And that needs to change. Walmart employee shot 6 people in Virginia today. That is on our list of things to cover. I actually worked at a Walmart one summer, and I ended up just walking out, which hopefully that didn't affect any of my fellow employees negatively. But dude, I couldn't do it. They are a hellish corporation. Hellish. I don't even know any other way to describe it. I believe that article's coming up here at some point. Any thoughts on union corruption, like involvement with the mafia in the 20th century? They did what they had to do. They did what they had to do to protect the workers. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, they teamed up with the lumpen proletariat, I guess is what you would call it. They teamed up with the crime bosses, which is better than teaming up with the capitalists. I prefer corruption, as in collaboration with crime bosses and trade unionists, than I would between trade unionists and the capitalists that they're supposed to be fighting. Because ultimately, crime and the sale of illegal drugs and stuff is a product of capitalism. We've talked a million times about how drugs flowed over the border when the USSR collapsed for the first time in years, and they hadn't had a drug trade like that. Same with the sex trade. Hey Eddie, here's an infographics video where they talk about U.S. intervention during the Russian Civil War and the aftermath of World War I. That sounds good. Thank you, Jacob. Oh shoot, I forgot to grab your video from earlier. I'm sorry. You sent a TikTok, I know. But the infographics one, that one sounds really good. Like really good for a reaction. If not today, someday. Yeah. Walmart is a nice, small, family-run business. They literally treat it like that. In the break room, there's a picture of Sam Walton, the guy who runs Walmart. And it's like, he worked so hard, and he drove his pickup truck till the day he died. He was just a small-town guy, just trying to get by, running his old shop, Walmart. It's like his 6 descendants now are like the richest people in the world. And the exploitative practices of this corporation are almost unbelievable. Let me see. When was I going to talk about the shooting at the Walmart? We can go to that right now. It was in Virginia. Where was it? Oh shoot! I forgot to pull up the article. I forgot to link the article. One sec. Got it. I got it. We good. So yeah. Tragic. I hate when these things happen. It's part of the reason, I don't cover these a lot is because I don't want people to live in fear in this country. These things are so common. We got to do something about them, But I don't think that it's good to like spend all your time thinking about it or worrying about it, that it might happen to you, you know, despite the fact that there is a possibility for all of us living in this country. But yeah, you had a man who went into Walmart and killed his coworkers. Really sad, you know, to see somebody killing the people who should be his allies. You know, the reason he's probably disgruntled and isolated and gets no help with, or got no help with mental health issues, and you know the reason they were led to such a deranged state where they'd kill their coworkers. You know, Walmart probably played a role in that. The exploitative working conditions in driving this person to the brink of insanity. So, you know, rather than organizing with coworkers against the bosses exploiting them and keeping them doing this meticulous, horrific job all day at an exploitative wage, I guess not horrific, but boring, long your job with long hours all day. Rather than teaming up with coworkers against them, you literally have someone breaking and killing their coworkers. And Joe Biden responded to this by saying, because of yet another horrific and senseless act of violence, there are now even more tables across the country that will have empty seats this Thanksgiving. Like, let's just use the Thanksgiving holiday to not do anything about this, to not address any of the problems that create these mass shootings. Let's just keep sending arms and weapons to neo-Yazis in Europe who could, you know, influence shooters in the U.S. and have influenced shooters in the U.S. Let's continue to make our culture one of violence and expansion and individualism. And if you're not the man, if you can't rise to the top by your own merits and your parents' money, then you're just a piece of shit and you deserve to be isolated and you deserve to struggle. You know, rather than doing anything about our society, our sick society, of which these shootings are a symptom, it's just, oh, think of the families who will have empty seats on Thanksgiving. I can't think of a more substanceless, stupid thing to say from the person who's in charge of our country, the most powerful person in our country, when this was the 600th mass shooting in the U.S. this year. That's all you have to say is, I feel bad that those families will have empty seats at Thanksgiving when some working class people get shot, when there are 600 of these every year in the country you're in charge of, and economic conditions have been deteriorating for people as work has been getting more intense. And all you're doing is sending a bunch of arms and weapons and support to the U.S. coup government in Ukraine and neo-Yazis in Ukraine. That's all you have to say, Joe. I mean, I see it as a symptom of our imperialistic society. You're surrounded by war propaganda. You're exploited every day. You're isolated from other people and from community and from your family. And I mean, what other explanation do you get for 600 mass shootings? And yeah, there need to be common sense gun laws too, right? There need to be common sense gun laws in every country probably. Although I don't support disarming the proletariat. And personally, I got doxed this week. Someone was releasing my personal information. What if a crazy person comes after me? You know, we live in a country with 600 of these mass shootings a year. You know, I would like to have something to protect myself. You know, so I don't agree with the government just taking guns away as the only solution, which is what's frustrating. The way that I find out that a mass shooting happened is logging on Twitter and seeing all these Democratic politicians tweeting about guns, right? It's like as soon as they hear about one of these tragedies, the 600th of this year, they just run to their phones and like, I can use this to tweet about guns. And conservatives, you know, accuse them of weaponizing the political issue and never talking about mental health, which is also hypocritical because obviously the conservative politicians aren't going to do shit about mental health. They're not going to move towards making the healthcare system public and giving working people more access to it. So it's just like, shut up. You don't actually care. But that's what the Democrats are doing. You know, they weaponize these tragedies to hammer their agenda, hammer an issue which they know is, you know, fairly popular for them with about like 50% of the country. Or I mean, like common sense gun laws are supported by like 94% of the country, or increased background checks or whatever. So they use it to push for their own political agenda. It's like, why are we not questioning the preconditions here? You know, why are we not questioning imperialism and the role that having an imperialistic, propagandized, oligarch-run society has on the people of that society? You know, and the role that that has in making them more violent when, you know, you have movies like American Sniper winning Best Picture, glorifying this horrific murder of millions of people in Iraq. And not to go down the road of video games cause mass shootings, you know. But we do have a lot of very violent media and violent propaganda used to justify very, very, very real killing and very, very real war, and to recruit people into those wars. Right? And Activision, Call of Duty, does have a very, very tight connection with the U.S. State Department. So Hollywood and a lot of the production of American media that children are consuming every day, a lot of that is controlled by the military-industrial complex, oligarchs and corporations who want to do endless war, killed millions in Iraq, and then said it was worth it. So, you know, I think this is a symptom of that. And like you said before, you had like I said before, you also had someone recently, I believe within this year, who was inspired by the Azov Battalion in Ukraine. So there you have a direct link, you know, a direct link to where the right-wingers, the Yahtzees that the U.S. is funding abroad as a part of their imperial project in East Europe, comes back home and leads to a mass shooting domestically. Yeah, and what was I gonna say? I was watching another video today. It's this like famous video of this cop who's a deputy, being killed by a Vietnam vet, suffering from PTSD at a traffic stop. So the guy just pulls him over, the cop, and then this guy gets out and he's acting crazy, and then he basically grabs a rifle and attacks the cop. And it's a really like disturbing video because you hear the cop like screaming as he's dying, and being shot. It was captured by dash cam. And that video is now used. It was in the late 90s. That video is now used to train cops and to say, you know, even during a traffic stop, you have to be ready to grab your gun and shoot, you know, because they might shoot you first out of nowhere. And then you'll end up dead. And it's a really disturbing video that they use to burn it into your brain forever, you know. So that has been weaponized by the police, these armed bodies of the state. And, you know, we think the solution is, oh, police just have to shoot first, right? That's the argument they're making. Police just have to shoot first so this doesn't happen to them. Well, hold on. Let's think about the preconditions that even allowed this situation to exist. Right? This man who did the shooting has PTSD. When he was 18 years old, he was drafted into the military and sent into the jungles of Vietnam. Right? In some of the most important intellectual developmental years of his life, he was fighting in a horrible, horrible, horrible war, watching people die in brutal, graphic ways every single day. You know, watching his best friends, the people he lived his life with, fall in booby traps and, you know, be killed by people in hiding. You know, and imagine what that does to somebody's psyche for the rest of their life. Clearly, it messed them up. This person got sent into Vietnam when they were in their early 20s, or were in Vietnam when they're in their early 20s, and then they end up killing a police officer and snapping when they're like 50 years old. So, but rather than question the imperialism, you know, rather than question the system that sends 18-year-olds in our country to go fight and die in these wars and come back with PTSD and then doesn't take care of them when they come back, instead of questioning that system, you know, all the debate centers around the issue. Well, you know, should cops shoot sooner or should they not? You know, who's really the bad guy? You know, are cops really so bad? We have to question the preconditions. You know, how does the structure of our society allow these things to come about repeatedly? How does, there's something wrong with the structure of American society if we're this country having 600 mass shootings a year and other countries aren't dealing with this on the same level, right? There's something in the structure of society that we're not looking at. So what the media does is they just isolate these issues. The media is so good at isolating these issues. Let's show you 2 graphic videos of police killing black people, and then we'll show you 2 graphic videos of police being killed. What should police do? Should they shoot first or shoot second? Well, let's talk about the structure of the police. The police are an armed body of the state. The police have been enforcing this drug war for the past, however many years, that keeps the prisons filled with bodies and keeps them doing prison labor for the prison industrial complex. And then the police have been militarized in order to carry this out, in order to fight back against resistance from groups like the Black Panthers. And rather than talking about the preconditions that have allowed the police departments in modern day to exist in the way that they do, rather than talking about the historical development of the societal institutions we have today, it's just, oh, are cops good or bad? Like, let's talk about the institution of the police, not the morality of the individual police. But sorry, that I got kind of off track in my rant about Walmart. Not really though. We just have to question the preconditions as socialists that would allow 600 mass shootings to happen a year in our country. And is one of those conditions the insane amount of guns we have in our country? That plays a role. It absolutely does. Marx said, don't disarm the workers. I'm not saying the workers should be disarmed, but we can have common sense background checks. This country has an insane amount of guns. But that is not the only reason. And that is not the only reason. I don't think it's the main reason. It's a very sick country, and we have to look at the structure of our country and, as I said, the preconditions that allow these things to exist and allow these things to happen. And also, I worked at Walmart. Our Walmart was so bad. They were understaffed all the time. Always understaffed. So much so that the HR lady, the human resources lady, who you were supposed to call if you were sick or if you had an issue or a dispute, if anything was wrong, she was supposed to take care of the humans. She's a human resources. We were so understaffed that she had to stock shelves every day. She was never, ever in her office. And then the phone in her office didn't have a voicemail. You couldn't call her and leave a voice message and say, hey, here's my problem. So you just had to wait or continually call and hope she was in her office. If you were sick or something, or if you couldn't come in, or if you had any kind of problem, because they were short-staffed. And it's like, how are we short-staffed? Right? The 6 people who own this company are the richest people in the world. Their shareholders are being paid out millions and millions and millions of dollars a year. It's like the most profitable company in all of America. So the richest company in all of America can't staff themselves? Like, what does this mean? And this was before I read Capital that I was experiencing this. But now, of course, I know that they're just trying to pay as little in wages as they possibly can so that they can make as much profit as possible. So, having the human resources lady stock shelves instead of just sitting in her office and actually helping people like she's supposed to makes more money for Walmart. So no matter how much profit they make, we'll always be understaffed because they're purposefully paying for as little staff as possible. Also, they had these little scanners that would tell you where to put food on the shelf, and they never had enough for everyone. We always had to share scanners, and I was always borrowing it from other people. And I'm like, making billions of dollars a year. Just give me a damn scanner. But that's how you become such a profitable company. You screw over your workers, you make their conditions terrible, and you push them to the point of breaking. If you've seen a TikTok about the Walmart employee who was an older lady, and the person who made the video was sad that she had to work at such an older age, and he made a GoFundMe. When Walmart heard about it, they gave it back after she reached her goal. They gave the money back? or they made her give it back after she reached her goal. Oh my God, what? That happened? That is horrible. That is so horrible. That, and Walmart they'll portray themselves as good people. They'll say Walmart's a great company because we employ many impoverished people. You're the reason they're impoverished. I remember one of my friends sent me that once. It was a joke, but I was shitting on Walmart on my Snapchat story while I was at work. And he was like, Walmart employs many impoverished people. You shouldn't shit on them like this. I'm like, yeah, we're impoverished because we work here. Like, what? Yes, please tag me in that, Cherry Waves. I'd really appreciate it. I'm looking it up right now. Here's some profits for you. Thank you, Ross. Thank you for those sweet, sweet socialist profits. Ross is always giving us the super chats. You should ask a question sometime, Ross, if you have one. Usually when people send super chats, it's because they want to tell me something or ask a question. You're always just sending them for the fun of it, to give us support. I appreciate it very much. But if you want a question answered or a topic to be discussed, just let me know. I really appreciate your support as always. I want to see this. Yeah. I can't believe that. I don't know. I'm reading an article about it right now. I don't know if they made her give the money back, but they fired her. They at least fired her. Holy shit, this is nuts. This says a TikToker raised nearly $170,000 for an older Walmart worker so she could pay off her mortgage and retire. Crazy. A 15-second TikTok video raised almost $170,000. Or here, let's see what this says. The worker originally told him she needed to work to pay her mortgage. The TikToker told viewers he'd been suspended with pay from his job for making the videos. Okay, so the TikToker for making these videos got suspended and wasn't allowed to be paid. So identified by name no one, Walmart break room, I should be this hard. I was supposed to video. Hard worker. I'd accept it, but I'd still have to work until I get the other $60,000 paid off the house. Jeez. All money she owes to banks and landlords that are the reason this lady has to keep working at Walmart till she probably dies on the job. She told him seemingly on plus the donations raised. It would help. The mortgage will go way down. It won't take long now. So sad. And they raised $170,000 for it, and it still doesn't even get close. Where's the part about him getting suspended from pay? Okay. Oh, so Walmart did pressure him to delete it. Yeah. Retirement is not given for tons of workers. 36% of older Americans don't have money for retirement. That's going to be even harder for it's going to be even more for younger generations. Just wait on it. That number is only going to go up. So Walmart does not pay her a living wage, not even close to enough to survive, which is horrible. What are people even supposed to do in this society? But according to Bonagura, the TikToker, Walmart told them they were receiving threats because of his videos. They're getting a lot of backlash, so they told me I need to delete the video and delete the GoFundMe and return all the money to the people I donated it to, or they're going to get the cops involved. Oh, what? It's real. It's true. They threatened to call the police. Oh, these people are scum of the earth. Whoever works for the Walmart legal team, how do you sleep at night? You are the legal arm of the worst corporation in the world. Bruh. We're going to call the cops on you? for raising money for an old woman. So not only are they paying this lady not even close to enough to survive, as they pay out, as we've said, billions and billions of dollars to their shareholders, as they're one of the most profitable countries on earth. They're paying this lady not even close to enough to survive. Someone comes along, tells her story, and raises money for her so she can survive and pay her freaking mortgage on her freaking house. And Walmart says, we are going to call the police on you. We are going to get the cops, the armed body of the state, which serves as a tool for the suppression of the working class by the ruling class. And I've never seen a better example than this. We're going to call the cops on you for raising money so an old lady can retire. They said, we will call the cops on you unless you take that down and take all that lady's money away and don't pay for her mortgage, because this is bad publicity for us. Like, it's way worse publicity that you told him you were going to call the cops unless he gives the money back. You literally just threatened him with legal action for trying to pay for someone's retirement that you should be paying for. The arrogance of these capitalists. Like, this is what happens now. We're 40 years deep into neoliberalism, and the capitalists are so arrogant. You know, they face such a little threat from the militant working class that they'll do shit like this. That they'll literally be like, no, you can't even help your fellow workers retire. Or you know, if you're a TikTok creator, influencer, you can't help working class people retire. Or we'll call the cops on you and they're coming for you with guns. Holy crap. I mean, I'm not surprised though. Like I said, I've worked at a lot of places, had a lot of different jobs, all of them exploitative in unique ways. But the worst by far was Walmart. And I worked at a non-union concrete company that was basically only felons and illegal immigrants. That was basically the only people they hired. And then there were like 3 college wrestlers who they hired that summer because we wanted to do it. And it paid pretty, not pretty well. It paid terribly, actually, for the work that we were doing. And that was really, really hard and long. But I would trade that summer 1,000,000 times versus the summer at Walmart. I'd rather, do backbreaking labor in the hot sun from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., if not 7 p.m. At that concrete company than I would go stock the shelves at Walmart and put cheese on the shelves from 4 a.m. to 11 a.m., which is what I worked, even though I told them I couldn't work those hours. They signed me up for them anyways. It's just a horrible, horrible company. It's like, how are all of your locations understaffed when you're the most profitable corporation in the world? Well, wow, I can't believe that was a real story, man. I'm definitely going to put that on YouTube, me reacting to that. I was so angry. Pigs are just protectors of people who own private property. Exactly. I mean, that Walmart story is a great example, right? If you raise money for this old lady's retirement, we're sending the pigs after you. We're sending the cops after you with their guns and their monopoly on violence. But think about it like this. If the Walmart workers were organized and they went into the store one day and they said, we talked to all the manufacturing workers and all the truckers who make all the commodities that we sell here in the store at Walmart. And we're in charge of it now. This property is ours because we make it. Our labor creates it. We manage it and organize it so that it can be sold to people and that capitalists and shareholders on Wall Street can make money. This is now our property. What the Walmart shareholders would do is call the police. They would call the cops and they would say, go get our property back. And the cops would. The cops would say, we're allowed to shoot you. You're not allowed to shoot us. This property belongs to them. We have the monopoly on violence. We have the authority here. And what that authority is used for is for, as Jacob said, protecting the property of the property owners, the capitalists. If you tried to seize the means of production with your coworkers today, your boss would call the police to protect his private property. That's the best way to think about the function that the cops play. And, you can look at the prison industrial complex in the U.S., and that's a unique evil. a unique evil enforced by the cops, enforcing this racist war on drugs. But ultimately, the cops are there to protect the private property of capital. Nationalize Walmart. Darn right. Nationalize all the sources of food distribution. Why would you not? Nationalize all the big chain supercenters. Exactly. And what's funny is Walmart does a lot of their planning via computer calculations. There was a really good book written called The Republic of Walmart. And it's like a debunk of the libertarians' ECP theory, the economic calculation problem, that socialism can just never, ever, ever, ever work because you can't calculate an entire economy. So we just have to trust the market. And socialism will never be as efficient as the market. When Walmart basically uses central planning to distribute goods and services to all their stores based on what they know people are going to buy. They've created computer programs to estimate what commodities people want, what they're going to buy. And these computer programs are centralized, and then they create the distribution or plan and administrate the distribution for all the various stores. So it's basically central economic planning. And there's this book called The Republic of Walmart, like I said, saying that, capitalism has and Walmart has debunked the ECP, which there's a really good Marx quote called as capitalism develops, it creates its own gravediggers. Perfect example. Capitalism creates the technology needed to improve socialist planning. Hey, I DM'd you on Instagram regarding if you needed Instapost stuff, graphic design. Love all your content, homie, your thumbnails. Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you. I will definitely check that out. Maybe you've heard me say this. We need graphic designers more than anything. That's the number one thing we need by far is graphic designers, artists. We have tons of writers, tons of editors, and we'll always take more, of course. A lot of people creating video content. We'll always take more. But what we really need is people who can do that design work and the shit that we can't do. We already have a team of 3-4 designers. So if you want to join that team, hit me up. It's three of them now in total. So I will check it out. My Instagram is FilmBro. You can take a look at all my posts, stuff I've edited. Very cool. I'm glad that you have it up somewhere. Just a tip for anybody out there who's a graphic designer. Have somewhere where people can go look at your work. Because sometimes people have to send me their work, and it takes a while and it's harder. It's easier to just look at it, and then it makes you seem more professional. It makes you seem like you know what you're doing. You already have this body of work where you can point people. Just a little tip for you graphic designers out there. Yeah. Well, I got to go to the bathroom quick, but we got a lot of people in the stream right now. 65. Thank you for being with us. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. We're trying to hit 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year on YouTube. It ain't going to happen. But we're going to try. I can't remember what our goal is on Twitch. I set some goal that we're also not going to hit. But yeah, share, like, help us not get suppressed by the Silicon Valley oligarchs, the algorithm. Yeah, I am going to go write down that I need to look at FilmBro's DM later. And I'll pull up something for y'all to watch while I run to the bathroom here. What is this? This looks interesting. Oh, it's too long. I know what I'll pull up. BRB. Forgot to unmute myself. Did you like the video I played? Is this a new Metallica song? Yes. Yes, that is Enter Sandman by Metallica and Nyan Cat. I'm surprised that we didn't lose all of our viewers when I played that, literally. True. I should have made some coffee while I was out there. Well, I'm gonna put something better on when I go to make more coffee for myself than Nyan Cat. What are we talking about in the chat? My brother used to have multiple jobs at Walmart before he landed a warehouse job that had slightly better working conditions and hours. Now I'm looking for employment in my area, and Walmart is the only place in my small-ass town that is guaranteed to give me a job. And I walk in knowing that it's going to be terrible, but it's my only option, and I don't have money. It's either move or get back into college. Dang. That's tough. That's tough. I mean, if you work at Walmart, you can always organize it. I know it's crappy working conditions compared to other places, but you can always try and organize those workers. And like, as much as it sucks, the tougher your working conditions are, the worse they are. The easier the workers will be to organize. Oh, I only had the audio of Nyan Cat on, which the audio was absolutely moving. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry I forgot to play the actual video. It's like a Pop-Tart cat floating through space. If people haven't seen it, but yeah, my recommendation, Jacob, try and organize. I mean, it might even be easier to organize in like a blue collar industry because you have more time to just talk to your coworkers. You know, you're just sitting around doing nothing all day, basically putting stuff on the shelves, or doing whatever else, cleaning. So there's a lot of interaction and time to converse with your coworkers and, you know, get them organized. Oh yeah, I forgot. For those of you who haven't seen it, for those of you who are uncultured, here's the video I was just playing. Very important video. This basically counts as socialist theory right here. So don't ask me why, it just does. Yeah, F. Vouch. I don't even know what we're talking about here. F. Vouch, I'm also banned from his chat. I'm a highly bannable person, but Haas's queer bashing is so cringy and disappointing. I want the woke intersectional MAGA communism arc to start. Is Haas doing queer bashing? That is disappointing. I hadn't seen that, but if you're from his audience and you're saying that, I mean, Nyan Cat is Praxis. Yes. Used to be a website. Did it? Did they get rid of that or what? There's like every kind of Nyan Cat too. There's like Butler Nyan Cat. I don't know. I used to be really into it, as you can see. The best way to guarantee job security is unionize. Talk to your coworkers and see what's happening in your area. Yes, it's also the best way to get fired, unfortunately, is to try and unionize because, like I said, in the U.S., you don't have the right to unionize in most places. They're, you know, a lot of places they're not allowed to fire you for unionizing, but, you know, they basically are. These corporations have powerful legal teams who can squash their employees' complaints. But yes, if you are able to unionize, that is the best way to get job security because you'll then be protected by that union. So agree. Talk to your coworkers. Be careful about it is all I'm saying. Be very careful in what you do. Move intelligently and cooperatively. But yes, that is what you should do ultimately. My comrade named Louis, who we've interviewed on Midwestern Marx, actually, one of the very, very first videos we did for Midwestern Marx was interviewing Louis, and he used to be a John Deere worker. He was in the John Deere union, huge, obviously major employer in our area. there's like 2 or 3 plants in our town alone, or real close to our town at least. He used to work there, ended up leaving there and was working at a dispensary. His body was just beaten up and tired of working his whole life and, you know, doing manufacturing. So he started working at a cannabis dispensary, started unionizing it. The employers caught word of it and they fired him just like that. Gone. Get out of here. You know, we're all about free love and, you know, just chill out, smoke weed and relax, man. But don't try and unionize, man, or you're out of here. You're fired, man. You got to listen to the boss, man. Like, come on, you're a cannabis dispensary. How are you going to fire your employee for unionizing? It just shows that, like, drugs shouldn't necessarily be connected to, like, socialism and the left. It has in the U.S. because of the war on drugs, which is this, you know, fake effort to clean up the streets and get drugs off the streets. Meanwhile, the CIA is facilitating the sale of drugs into our streets. Really, you know, it's a ploy to get the prisons filled with bodies for the prison industrial complex and for all that cheap labor. But that's led to, you know, well, we should just legalize all drugs and drugs are great and drugs are actually good for you. And the government's been lying to you about drugs the whole time. And, you know, there are medicinal ways that marijuana and THC can be used for sure. But it's also the recreational use is making a bunch of money for like tobacco companies and, you know, these giant conglomerates who saw this market opening up for weed as it became legalized, you know, and moved to monopolize it just the same way they would do with any commodity. And now it's just become commodified. So, you know, we're not even going to maximize the medicinal benefits of it. And there are a lot of people who just go to work and, you know, they smoke at work all day to get through the day, or, you know, at least they come home and just smoke. And it distracts them from their own liberation, right? It distracts them from actually organizing and doing something about their conditions. Cause it's like, at least I can just smoke weed and get by. You know, so it's not necessarily a socialistic thing, just to be totally pro weed. I mean, we do need, or totally pro drugs. We do need decriminalization. You know, that's been proven to be the best way to do it. We do need more rehabilitation. We do need to look into the medicinal and psychological health benefits of things like THC or of things like psychedelics, which have been shown to have many therapeutic uses and have had great success in clinical trials evaluating their the possibility of therapy using psychedelics. But this stuff isn't researched, right? It's all caught up in the legal system. The war on drugs just wants to make everything a Schedule I drug. You know, it's all the same. All drugs are evil. We're going to throw you on the slammer for all of them. 3 strikes, you're out. You know, go make money for AT&T and do prison labor for AT&T and fucking all the other companies who make up the prison industrial complex. So we're not thinking about drugs rationally is my point. We're not thinking about how we can use the medicinal benefits while also negating the negative benefits, negating negative things that can come about from, you know, overusing even a drug like marijuana. That's relatively harmless when you're just describing it as a drug and comparing it to something like crystal meth. I worked in addiction services. Oh, very cool. Very cool. Bring back the Panthers discipline. Yes. Chris Bagley, you are awesome. You've been putting some fire in the chat this entire stream. Bring back the discipline. Discipline. Hold yourself to a higher standard. I just spilled on myself. As a communist, don't fall into the consumerist, individualistic culture of capitalism. Don't do it. Don't do it. Hold yourself to a higher standard. You know, they want you to just do drugs every day, all day, in order to get through the day and not focus on your own liberation and just play video games, you know? And Yeah, those things can make life easier. Those things are okay in moderation for sure. Video games are, a good way to relieve stress. But, don't just fall into consumerism. Oh, I just got to work, get through the day, and then I can go home and do drugs and play video games. Develop yourself, read, exercise, organize. You can do it. I believe in you, even though it's hard. Under capitalism, it's commodity or criminalized. Fight for the decriminalization to at least end punishment for problems. Commodity or right. Fight for decriminalization to at least end punishment for yeah. It took me a second to see what you were to comprehend the argument you were making, but I agree with this. Like under capitalism, you have two choices. It's commodified, like capitalism commodifies everything, like it commodifies healthcare and everything else. Like it commodifies sex. Drugs can be commodified, or you can not commodify them and then they're criminalized, right? They're still going to be commodified on the black market. People are still going to find a way to sell them illegally. But, that's your only option to stop them from being completely commodified and just sold by corporations, like you see with marijuana now. So, decriminalization is the position to take right now for making people's lives better, because it hampers the prison industrial complex, stops the prison industrial complex. And it's been proven to be the most successful. Like in Portugal, they're obviously a capitalist country, but I'm pretty sure they have the lowest drug rates of like Western countries by a lot because of the decriminalization of drugs and a focus on rehabilitation rather than punishment. Drug statistics. I know this is a talking point that social democrats use. This Portugal talking point is kind of like left over from my social democrat days. Talking about decriminalization, talking about the legalization of drugs and stuff. But let's see here. This is an article, and you have to be careful too, because there's also a lot of anti-drug propaganda, right? And that obviously we know the goofy anti-drug PSAs put out by the government back in the day. There's a whole lot of that stuff too. So there's propaganda on both sides, but drug-related deaths have remained below the EU average since 2001. The proportion of prisoners sentenced for drugs has fallen from 40 to 15%. Like, that's crazy. That is an undeniably good thing that's come out of decriminalization in Portugal, a capitalist country. Sorry, I got to zoom in. My screen is just so big. One more time. One more zoom. So rates of drug use have remained consistently below EU average. I already read that. Groundbreaking reforms in Portugal. In 2001, Portugal decriminalized the personal possession of all drugs as part of a wider reorientation policy towards a health-led approach. A health-led approach. That is how we need to look at these drug issues, as a public health issue, right? People who are going through withdrawals, people who have drug addiction, these are people who are sick. Right? We talk about mental illness, but then we look at drug addiction like it's criminal and not an illness of the mind and the body. So we need a public health-led approach. Possessing drugs for personal use is instead treated as an administrative offense, meaning it's no longer punishable by imprisonment. And I believe actually Iowa decriminalized recently. Someone told me that. And does not result in a criminal record and associated stigma. Drugs are, however, still confiscated, and possession may result in administrative penalties such as fines or community service. How about that for an idea? If you get caught with some kind of deadly drug, if you get caught with heroin or meth, we'll send you to rehab. We'll take the drug, we'll send you to rehab, and you can do some community service. You can get connected with the community. I feel like that's a better punishment than, sending people to jail or even fining them. Right, because a fine for somebody who's addicted to drugs, a lot of times under capitalism, people struggling with drug addiction are also in poverty or also struggling economically. So, yeah, not sure how I feel about the fines, but either way, whether such a penalty is applied to decided by district level panels made up of legal, health, and social work professionals known as commissions. I mean, this is like almost like a socialistic form of decriminalization that they went for here, where they're like, we're really going to make an effort to make drug addiction a public health matter. And we're actually going to enact practical things to tackle this issue, to tackle this as a public health issue. An individual referred to a commission the first time that drug use is non-problematic. So, the more times that you do it, the more the punishments are. But it's not the freaking 3 strikes you're out rule, the crime bill written by Joe Biden in the US, where it says if you get caught 3 times, I don't know how long and you go to prison for like a long time. Rather than that, they get you more help, or they give you a fine or whatever, but they're not sending you to jail in Portugal. In the vast majority of instances, problematic drug use is not identified and cases are simply suspended. Individuals referred to the commissions overwhelmingly view their purpose as helping to reduce use and educate on drug use. So that's the most important part, right? Individuals who go to these commissions, the people who are struggling with drug addiction, overwhelmingly view them as helping to reduce use of drugs and educate people on the risk of drugs. Would anybody in the US with a working brain who's not super biased conservative say that about the police? Would anybody say that about the cops, especially those who are actually on drugs? Right? With the people actually on drugs being thrown in the slammer, dragged to court in handcuffs by the police, say that the police are really there to educate and help people get rehabilitation, stop doing drugs? Of course not. There's a reason we call them pigs. There's a reason nobody in low-income neighborhoods likes the police. They notoriously hate the police. And there's a reason that black people notoriously hate the police. It's because they're not there to help. They're not there to educate. They're to enforce the war on drugs. And they've done so in an incredibly racist, violent way, as they've been increasingly militarized over the years. So just the fact that, drug addicts, people struggling with drug addiction would say this about the commissions, who punish them for being addicted to drugs. They say they're here for education and, to get people off drugs. It is what it is. Versus we have the police and the court system in the US, which nobody would say that about. Crazy. They're non-judgmental in nature, and a primary focus is safeguarding the right to the health of those referred. Non-judgmental. Think about that. They have non-judgmental commissions there to give people punishments or get them, hooked up with rehabilitation for drug addiction. Versus here, we call you a deadbeat drug addict piece of crap and throw you in the slammer. You are literally judged. A judge. They take you in front of a judge who tells you you're a bad person, go to a cage. Versus the most successful country in the West for combating drug addiction, they do it in a completely non-judgmental way, right? Where the primary focus is safeguarding the right to health, making people's health better. Like, holy shit, what a concept. What a concept that the institutions in society that run our society are actually focused on making people's health better instead of exploiting them and keeping the prisons full enough with bodies to please the corporations who make up the prison industrial complex. So very, very interesting. Here, what's this? Importantly, the decriminalization of personal possession is only one part of a broader health-centered drug policy reforms that involve increased focus on harm reduction and treatment provision. Right. So this is what was really, successful, or what made the program successful. Like, yes, the decriminalization was good, and you move away from what we were talking about, a less judgmental and less punitive form of punishment for drug addiction, way of handling it. But then they also implemented all these programs to help people, right? They organized all these different ways of helping people with drug addiction outside of just throwing them in prison, right? You have these administrative commissions. They moved to a preventative public health centered approach rather than a punishment based approach. They created new institutions to handle, punishment for drugs rather than the bourgeois courts, rather than just the current legal system and the police, who are an armed body of the state. So that's why I call this like a socialistic policy, because we need to think about like creating new administrative bodies to replace the ones we have now. Like, people say abolish the police. And I agree, abolish the police as they currently exist as an armed body of the state with a monopoly on violence for the suppression of one class over another. But we need to replace them. What kind of administrative bodies will handle punishment and crime? What kind of administrative bodies will handle drug addiction? How do we look at drug addiction? Do we just decriminalize it and let people do what they want and let corporations sell crystal meth if they feel like it? Like libertarians want, or do we, invest in all these programs to help people? What are the punishments? Which drugs are legal? Which drugs should we study for their medicinal benefits? All these things have to be determined, and none of these things, are thought of rationally by the courts and the police as they currently exist today under capitalism. But as socialists, we can think of rational ways and discuss rational ways to move forward and practically start to move towards socialism, practically start to break up this capitalist dictatorship we live under and offer that to people as an alternative. All right, bit of a rant about Portugal there. What even got me talking about drug decriminalization? I don't even remember. Material wealth when a tile setter adds value to a new or used home. My God, my back hurts today. Were you setting tiles today? The Yankee Tanky makes me sad. What happened to the Yankee Tanky? I know them, kind of. My favorite of the Yankee Tanky is like Pizza Hut. What the hell? What are you guys talking about in the chat right now? I'm so far lost. Black Panthers also required you to read theory, going back to the discipline, and pass their political education program before you're allowed to join. I love that. PSL does a lot of that. PSL does a lot of ideological and theoretical education, and it's good. I like it. I think it might be a bit much, and I'd like they mostly focus on imperialism, right, and just being anti-war, and I think that's most of what their theoretical training is just imperialism. But I wish PSL would do more to reach the actual productive working class in the U.S. and educate more about things like the CPUSA manual of 1940 or whatever it is, which I was recommending earlier, which is CPUSA's manual back when CPUSA was big and booming, for how to handle the practical questions of organizing. How do we connect to workers? How do we talk to the unions? How do we organize our community? How do we interact with the unions? How do we interact with the local governments? I feel like there's a little bit less of that with PSL and more of a focus on global issues, which I believe Mike Preisner, former Iraq veteran, was one of the founders of PSL. I mean, like, it makes sense, right? It makes sense, and they do great work. They're always putting out fire stuff about imperialism. I just wish if they were going to force that theoretical training and discipline before people join their party, that it would more address the practical questions of organizing American workers. But whatever. No, I haven't worked in over 10 years, but the back pain will always be there. Dang, that's sad. I'm sorry. I have back pain too from wrestling. Does the CPUSA require theory? Not anymore. They allow anybody to join. They tell you to read the organizing manual, right? They suggest it when you join, and I pretty much am making everyone in my chapter read it. I mean, everyone in my CPUSA chapter is like a close friend. So I'm basically saying y'all have to read this and tell me what you thought of it at the next meeting. But CPUSA, the Central Committee themselves, do not require it. No. All right, continuing. Geez, I made this most important news of the week or of today section a lot longer than I thought I did. The Marxist analysis of today, or I'm just talking for longer than I expected to talk for, but we're making our way through it. We're almost through all the important news of today. It's also kind of fun to go over these news stories. Next time I might make this segment a little shorter so we can talk about more theory. But Wall Street Journal. China is investing billions in Pakistan. Its workers there are under attack. So Wall Street Journal, I love to read the Wall Street Journal. I've told people this. It's just the mouthpiece of the bourgeoisie, right? It's just the mouthpiece of Wall Street, of the people who most make up the U.S. imperialist ruling class, capitalist ruling class. So they say funny stuff by accident all the time, while also giving a fairly decent analysis, not a decent analysis of what's going on, but they give a lot of important facts, right? Most of what I would say is the most important stuff going on in the world is generally covered in Wall Street Journal, unless it makes the U.S. and capitalism look bad. But this is another one of those hilarious ones where they're going to have a meltdown basically about China's Belt and Road Initiative. So it says, in April, a Pakistani mother of two blew herself up outside the gate of Karachi University's Chinese Language and Culture Institute, incinerating a minibus and killing 3 Chinese teachers and a Pakistani driver. The attack was one of a growing number targeting Chinese nationals working abroad in Asia and Africa. Was a sign of China's deepening challenges as it pours money into the developing world with the aim of extending its influence. So one, all these attacks targeting Chinese nationals working abroad, I'm sure that has nothing to do with the massive global propaganda campaign that's been put out against China in the US's new Cold War strategy by the propaganda media, by U.S. intelligence agencies, by the U.S. government and State Department themselves, by NATO, by the U.S.'s allied countries in Europe, by Canada, by Australia, by right-wing military contractor think tanks like ASPI. These institutions, powerful, wealthy institutions, have been in overdrive, talking about how China's evil and how they want to take over and how they're not helping the developing world build infrastructure. They're controlling their people like slaves because China's just so evil. And the only reason they would dump money into the developing world is to extend their influence so they can kill people. This nonstop propaganda campaign has been put out against China. And then when hate crimes happen against Chinese nationals, against Chinese people, which is also something that's been increasing massively in the U.S. for the last few years, since NATO stated their number one goal is to destroy China. Since that's happened, you've seen a massive increase in hate crimes towards Chinese people. In the U.S. media, outlets like the Wall Street Journal, who do propaganda and tell lies about China and Chinese people all the time, take no responsibility for it. Right? This is all China's fault. It's China's fault for investing in the developing world. It's China's fault for helping Pakistan develop infrastructure, and do construction projects instead of trying to control other countries with sanctions and the military and financial and economic warfare like the U.S. does. Right? China should just stop trying to help these countries develop, because sometimes Chinese workers die when they're over there. Well, how about the U.S. should stop trying to destroy China and lying about China and doing propaganda about how China's evil 24/7? Because it's been proven to increase hate crimes towards Chinese people, just like hate crimes towards Muslim people went up when the war on terror started. When the U.S. started doing propaganda 24/7, trying to tell you that all Muslim people are terrorists. Of course, hate crimes went up. This is a direct product of the U.S. mainstream media. I don't know about this attack specifically, but the increased hate crimes against Chinese people are. And the fear-mongering about China. And it was 2019, I believe, when NATO held a summit, saying that their number one goal going forward is to destroy Russia and China. So you have all the most powerful people in the world spreading nonsense about China and talking about how evil they are and how they're trying to take over the world. Of course, it's going to increase hate crimes. And then just look at the way this is framed. China's deepening challenges as they pour money into the developing world with the aim of extending its influence. Yeah, that's the only reason they're doing it. The only reason that China wants to help the developing world with the Belt and Road Initiative is to control them and influence them. There can only be one goal to trade policy: influence. It's not that they want strong trade partners or developed countries to trade with, or developed countries who they can ally with in the case of a US invasion. Or maybe they just want trade policy globally of mutual development where countries help each other grow and establish themselves economically, instead of the US foreign policy, which has dominated since World War II, where they exploit and steal resources and use cheap labor all across the world, and including the entirety of the global South. Nope, China just wants influence. That's all it is. They don't want any of that other stuff, you know. That stuff's just happening by accident. Like, how can you say China dumping millions? How can people read this and think that China dumping millions of dollars into the developing world, into these countries that the U.S. has purposefully prevented from developing and has stopped from developing for years and years and years, so the U.S. can rob them and exploit them and treat their people like slaves? China dumps millions of dollars into these countries to help them develop. It's like, oh, they're extending their influence. What about the 1,000 fucking U.S. military bases around the world? China's got less than 10. We have over 1,000. But we're not extending our influence? Or what about, or I don't know what I was going to say. I lost my train of thought. But it's just ridiculous. And how, you know, this is a sign of China's deepening challenges. Yeah, the increase in hate crimes is a sign of China's deepening challenges, in that the U.S. is increasingly trying to destroy them. That the U.S. is increasingly lying about their people, lying about the Belt and Road Initiative, lying about China being the aggressor and the one trying to expand global influence, when that's been the U.S. and they've been the dominant global influence in the world since the end of World War II. I'm harping on this hate crimes point, but it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And it's so ridiculous that they claim the Belt and Road Initiative. The only goal is to increase Chinese influence. Yeah, they do want to increase influence. You know, that is one part of it, one of the many parts of it, one of their many goals with the Belt and Road Initiative. But like, who doesn't? Like I just said, the U.S. tries to dominate the world with their military, with the gun. How is that? I mean, that's forcing your influence upon everyone. China just wants to create goodwill. They want other countries to look at China and think they are a trade partner with us. They are going to help us develop. You know, they are here to help us grow economically, establish ourselves economically, the opposite of what the U.S. has done. So yes, China wants to create influence. They want to create goodwill between countries. They don't want countries to hate them and want them destroyed and scream death to China like people scream death to the U.S. all around the world. You know, is that expanding their influence? I guess. You know, they would like these countries to be their allies. You know, they'd like these countries to ally with China instead of the murderous U.S. empire. I guess that's them nefariously expanding their influence, though, not just treating countries with mutual respect in order to create goodwill, which you'd think would be a basic principle of geopolitics. China is the largest lender to the developing world, mainly through Chinese leader Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Infrastructure Program. The country has worked to portray itself as the benevolent partner to the countries where it is spending money in an attempt to draw a distinction with Western powers. They haven't portrayed themselves as benevolent. The loans, I mean, China's very honest that the Belt and Road Initiative is good for them, right? It helps them. It allows them to invest a lot of this extra wealth that they have as they've been, you know, becoming challenging the U.S. as the most powerful economy on earth. It allows China to take that and develop their trade partners. Say, not only are we going to develop ourselves the way that we have over the past 70 years of, you know, abolishing poverty now, we're going to help our partners do this. We're going to help our allies do this. We're going to help developing countries in the global South who coincidentally have been prevented from developing by U.S. imperialism for years and years and years. We're going to help them develop so they can produce stuff and they can trade with us. We're going to give them infrastructure so they can be a major economic player, trade with us, and it'll be mutually beneficial. They call it a trade policy of mutual development rather than a trade policy of domination and exploitation and colonialism like the U.S. wants. So it's not that they're portraying themselves as benevolent, it's that they're being realistic. They're just being realistic. Every country has its own interests, right? Every country has unique interests, and their people have unique interests. But countries can trade with each other in a way that's mutually beneficial for their own interests, right? If Pakistan has more infrastructure, then they can produce more and they can trade with China. And if China has more infrastructure, same thing. Versus the US looks at it, oh, if Pakistan has infrastructure, then that means Pakistan is going to be producing a lot of commodities. And they're going to be selling those commodities in the global markets that US multinationals are also participating in. And then they're going to be providing more competition with US multinationals. That's why the US carpet bombed Serbia and hit 170 different factories, state-run factories, because the Serbian state was becoming a competitor in the global markets with US multinationals. So what's the solution? Blow them up with bombs. And that is the US's entire problem with China's Belt and Road Initiative. That is doing the reverse of that. That rather than blowing up the competitors to Western multinationals with bombs and drones, China is building up the US's global competitors. They're building up these other countries because China doesn't, they're not benevolent, but they don't view themselves in this, brutal market competition with these countries. China has central planning. China is trying to build socialism. They don't worship the market as if it's a god and then, kill whoever they can to control that market like the US does. Still as global research expands, China is increasingly grappling with the consequences of projecting power all over the world. This is so funny how the US projects. It's so funny how everything that's true about the US, they say about China. Projecting power all over the world, including corruption, local resentment, political instability, and violence. Sounds exactly like the US. For developing countries, China offers perhaps the best chance of quickly building major infrastructure. Yeah, it's a better chance than they're going to get taking out structural adjustment loans with the IMF and the World Bank. These US-backed financial institutions or Western finance capital or institutions controlled by Western finance capital, we're going to say, yeah, we'll give you a loan if you promise to abolish unions and make the minimum wage 1 penny per hour and not give anybody health care ever and never develop infrastructure that challenges multinationals. Then we'll give you a loan. There's just a few conditions attached. Of course, countries are going to trade with China where there's basically no strings attached to these loans, where they're forgiving a bunch of the debt that African countries owe them, where the interest rates on these loans are around 4%. The same interest rates that the US was giving to their European allies after World War II with the Marshall Plan, which helped West Europe rebuild faster than East Europe after World War II, by the way. Also shows how the market doesn't take care of things and the capitalists will use central economic planning when it benefits them. All right, I'm ranting. China has faced Western criticism from morons that it is pursuing lopsided lending arrangements that drive developing nations into heavy debt without necessarily delivering the desired local economic benefits. Oh, you mean just like the IMF and the World Bank, who I just described, who are Western institutions. Cool. But Beijing has also confronted significant risks, from defaults to political unrest that endangers Chinese assets and workers in borrowing countries. It endangers Chinese assets. They're forgiving a bunch of these loans. And what do you mean it endangers Chinese assets? I mean, there are Chinese assets in these countries, but they're helping these countries develop their own infrastructure, helping these places develop their own assets. It's funny that the US would view that as a risk against China. And what about China's assets? They're not super concerned about their assets, right? That's why they're forgiving a lot of these loans. They're concerned about developing their trade partners, helping other countries pull themselves out of poverty the same way that China has, and looking to build a global foreign policy going forward of multipolarity, no more US domination, and trade policy of mutual development. China sees this as the future, and this should be the future of of geopolitics for sure. But the U.S. capitalists, the U.S. the U.S. finance capitalists on Wall Street, projecting their own interests onto China, are like, "What about your assets? You're helping these countries develop. Think about your assets." And accusing them of projecting power all over the world, which is exactly what the US does. The Chinese have come to terms with the fact that these are unstable countries with fragile internal politics. It's Yun Sun, director of China program at the Stimson Center, a Washington-based think tank. You know, who else would we want to talk about China than somebody who lives in Washington, D.C. and works for some think tank, probably controlled by weapons manufacturers or whoever the hell. If you are going to operate here, you are going to encounter these problems. Blah, 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 blah. It's so dumb. Beijing accepts a degree of security risk in pursuing the Belt and Road program and is committed to working with partner governments such as Pakistan to mitigate threats to Chinese personnel and assets, Chinese experts say. Yeah. I mean, if we want to minimize the risks to Chinese personnel, and if we want to decrease the hate crimes against Chinese people, maybe Wall Street Journal, maybe you and all your buddies in mainstream media should stop telling us that China and all the people in China are evil and that they want to kill us. Because you know, when the most powerful media apparatuses in the world, the most powerful methods of information and communication in the world are talking about how all the Chinese people are evil and how they're all coming to get us, then yeah, it makes sense that some people consuming that information and consuming that media are going to start being violent towards Chinese people. But sure, blame it on the Belt and Road Initiative. Blame the hate crimes towards Chinese people that you and your buddies in mainstream media have brought about, Wall Street Journal. Blame it all on China for developing infrastructure in the global south and Pakistan. Yeah, it's all their fault for trading with them and trying to bring development and prosperity and combat poverty. It's not the US media for telling us that all Chinese people are evil. Hypocrisy, and they don't even realize it because they're so dumb. They probably believe their own bullshit about China. Article read like a threat rather than news coverage. Literally. That's a great way to put it. That is what it read like. China, stop developing countries in the global south. Otherwise, hate crimes are going to increase from the people who are leading to the increase in hate crimes. They are just jealous. Regarding theory, a while back on r-full communism, everyone ragged on CPUSA for being a bunch of revisionists and FBI agents. I know you're in CPUSA, obviously not a Fed or a revisionist. Thoughts? All I'll say is the party needs reform. It needs to move more towards the core principles of Marxism, Leninism, stuff like democratic centralism, and party democracy, and supporting these foundational Marxist concepts like dictatorship of the proletariat. And I believe they need to tail the Liberal Democratic Party less. I'll just say it. But also, I'm in CPUSA, and a lot of the different branches of CPUSA do different things. Because they don't have the best democratic centralism, it actually allows the parties to be pretty independent and be pretty unique. So there are tons of different chapters of CPUSA that have their own ideas about tailing Democrats and where our organizing effort should be, and about the leadership at CPUSA. So there's a diversity of opinions. It's just a matter, I think, of getting more people into the party and getting the party to truly work from the bottom up, right? Getting a party that truly functions with democratic centralism, where the working class members who constitute the base of the party and the legs of the party and the muscle of the party are really making all the party decisions. That's where we need to move with CPUSA. And if you join CPUSA, I will say this, because Carlos and I were talking about this today, you should be aware that you should be aware that you're not going to be able to just jump in and start like organizing right away, right? You're not going to be able to jump in and be like, this is amazing. You know, these are all like-minded communists, and there's so much infrastructure here with CPUSA. I feel like I have so many resources and I can just go organize whenever. It's not like that. The parties, there's not enough people in it right now. Maybe if you're in a big city, but we need to recruit more members. And then we need to get those members active in the party so we can have democracy. We need more democracy in the party. We need more members in the party. We need more people actually getting boots on the ground in the party. That's what needs to happen. So, yeah, don't just count on the party to like solve all your problems if you join, I guess, is all I'm saying. I'm in the Chicago YCL. Do you know a way that I can get in touch with your chapter? Just email me. Just email me at midwesternmarks@gmail.com. I'm going to put it in here. What are you on YouTube? And this email is public, but so anybody can use it. But if you email me about party stuff, the only other person who can read it is Carlos and Noah, I believe. So unless you're sending me something that you don't want Carlos and Noah to see, which I show them everything anyways, you can send it to there. Hasn't there been an increase in membership? A big increase, a huge increase. And I'd like to think that we were part of that at Midwestern Marks. I would like to think that. And there's been a huge increase in active members, which is what's really important, is getting active and involved on the ground, right? The YCL club in my area does most of their events during regular work hours, right after work, so it's hard to get involved. That's too bad. Yeah, and I mean, like, that's another reason why we need more members, so we could do like multiple shifts, right? Oh, there's a meeting for certain members on this day, and if you can't make it to that meeting, come to this meeting. But it's just, we're struggling, we need more resources and more people and more hours, more man hours or woman hours or non-binary hours, whatever hours you want. That's what we need. More people on the ground doing the work. And very, 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 very exciting news. I joined because of you and Carlos. Very cool. I'm glad to hear that. I think there are a lot of people who did that. So thank you. We're glad. And we're going to be talking about it more and more and more here. Because Midwestern Marks wants to get more involved on the ground and more involved with actual organizing efforts. But very exciting news along those same lines. Carlos recently joined DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. We were both DSA when we worked for Bernie. I don't know if my membership has expired or not, but I'm going to join DSA as well. So I'll be a dual member of CPUSA and DSA. And we are going to start supporting a specific Marxist caucus within DSA, people who we've communicated with, who want to work together with us and who want us in the party doing this. And they're basically like Marxist-Leninists. They're basically like anti-imperialist foreign policy. They think that we need to focus on class-based politics rather than professional managerial class issues and whatnot. So, yeah, we're going to start supporting that as well. So hopefully that will give us another arm or another vehicle for outreach. Reach out to people who are maybe not in CPUSA, who are skeptical of CPUSA, who would prefer DSA, and then just, hopefully work together. Have CPUSA and DSA work together to really fight for workers in this country and really have an organ of a working class political power for the first time in a long time. But obviously that's a long-term goal. I'm in DSA too because they're working on a local transit project and a working class alderman in my local ward, like neighborhood district in Chicago. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. So yeah, for those who I didn't know this, otherwise maybe I would have joined DSA a little sooner, is you can be in CPUSA and DSA. I believe they're the CPUSA allows you to be in like FRSO, some organization like that, as well as DSA. Sorry, my coach. Someone just sent me something. There's something important I gotta respond to. Did he really just find that? Sorry, had to respond to that text. Now I'm turning my notifications off. Hopefully they're off. I love not having to look at my phone. I thought DSA banned people also in democratic centralized orgs. I don't think so, and I don't think the DSA system of governance is actually technically, well, it's kind of like democratic centralism, but it's more like what do they call it? They call it like multi-pluralism or something, but there's different caucuses, I believe, who have their different beliefs, and they all make up a portion of the DSA. And based on how many members they have, how many members each group has, they have a more and more control within the actual decisions that are made at DSA. So that's a lot more organized than what goes on at CPUSA, a lot. And it's a lot closer to democratic centralism, but I don't know if they actually call it democratic centralism. I believe they want to allow for more ideological diversity. It's more of like a broad tent type thing, which in the past has been our criticism of them, but it makes sense to have a broad tent type political party in addition to CPUSA. So yeah, I think that's why they let people be in both. Yeah. All right, I'll be right back again, y'all. I gotta pee again, and I'm gonna make some coffee too. So I'll put on a real good video for you today, or right now. Something real entertaining for the people. Ya boy, Eddie Smooth, the worst wrestler of all time. I'm gonna put myself losing. Just kidding. I would never do that. I'm far too vain. Oh, these matches get taken down? What the hell? Where are they? Why can't I play them? That's so weird. It's not letting me actually play the matches right now. That is bizarre. Well, I guess I can't watch those matches. I'll have to find a different one. And I'm having to pee more by the second. So we really got to hurry this up because I'm about to burst. How's everybody doing today? Where is this match I'm trying to find? It was a while ago. Not that one. I lost that one. Definitely nothing I ever lost. Can never show that. There it is. Here's a good one. All right, enjoy watching me, folks. Sorry, I muted myself. I said maybe it's not working because it's a subscription-based website. Oh, sweet. I can find it on YouTube. All right, perfect. Problem solved. And I'll be right back.
Yes, sir. Send was out on the side. You said red pad was out before black got. We scored 2 red, 2 red, 4 2 reds. Challenge? Challenge in the last one. Looks like he's on the line with the mouse. Yeah. He's in perfect position to see it. Yep. And it's also right there. Good. Yeah.
How'd I do? Did I win? Ugh, excuse me. Oh, hey, a super chat while I was gone. Thank you very much. I'm just checking up on the chat a little bit here. I'm trying to start an on-the-ground Marxist club to reach out to the productive working class. How should I start out? My previous efforts led nowhere. Well, you can start a club with CPUSA, a chapter with CPUSA, or you can join DSA, try and get involved with the local DSA in your area, and then just try and, support and link up with like the more Marxist, anti-imperialist factions of DSA, the less liberal factions of DSA. Those would be my advice. I'll pull up the CPUSA's manual. I think it's 1945. I haven't read it in a little while. It's so good. what is it? 1935. The CPUSA's manual from 1935. This is really good when it comes to answering practical questions about organizing. Obviously, it was from years ago. Things have changed. Things are different. But there's a lot there about reaching out to union leaders, reaching out to leaders of workers' organizations, connecting them to the party. And basically, you know, the vanguardist Marxist-Leninist idea of organizing is you have a party that acts as the vehicle of the working class, is the, you know, a vehicle that can take political power for the working class, and that's the vanguard party. And the vanguard party must be constituted by the working class, so it must be connected to the militant, theoretically educated, revolutionary working class, and it should make the working class, you know, connected to itself and theoretically educated. I'm sure you're looking for more specific tips than that, than me just giving you the theory of it. I'm sure you understand vanguardism, but I would start by reaching out to any local organizations you have in the area. One of the members of our CPUSA club, he's not the running it yet, but he's going to be the person running a local homeless shelter. So that's how you can get, you know, in contact with your community. And there are a lot of labor union run food pantries. Like we have this thing called the Labor Harvest here in my town. And it's like a food pantry run by the labor union. So that's a perfect way to get involved with community organizing and get connected to the unions. Just reach out to them. They're always looking for help. The best way to do it, though, is to, you know, actually be in the union. Like the best way is to earn your coworkers' respect, and then, you know, convince them that the boss is screwing you and that a union could fix it or collective struggle can fix it. But yeah. A lot of arguments about infrared going on in the chat. I'm shocked. It's almost like every online leftist space ever for the last year. What else did I have to cover today? Venezuela. The vice president of Venezuela met with the UN human rights chief about sanctions. I wanted to cover Revolutionary Blackout Network and Sam Cedar, but I think it's going to take too long. I don't know if I have the energy for it right now. I'd rather do it when I can be more high energy. So I think I'm going to log off for today. It's been a great stream. It's been a fun stream. I'm glad I got to be with you all today. It was very fun. I felt a little rusty today, actually, or I felt like the last stream was maybe a little better that I did. I was more prepared for it, maybe. But this was a great stream. Talked about a lot of things that I wanted to talk about. Didn't get to the things that I thought I would, but that tends to happen. Oh, hey, look at that. Another super chat. Thank you. Thank you all for being here in general. You can check out our Patreon if you really want to support us, as always. But I'll answer this super chat, of course, for Catherine Crosby. Any key ideas / books I need to understand and teach to the union workers? The CPUSA manual is pretty good, actually. But we were talking about this earlier. Any kind of theory is going to be good, right? Any kind of theoretical education for workers is great. Anti-imperialist theoretical education, education on class struggle. Oh, don't say sorry for sending me money. Totally okay. I'm totally okay to answer your question over the internet for money that I can use to buy food. Thank you for your support. But any theory is going to be good, but what really needs to be done, and this is according to my militant buddy in the thick of the union work, is to educate them and understand and research how the union actually works, right? How is the union bureaucracy structured? You know, who is running the relevant union offices or apparatuses of the union or relevant unions in other industries that are related to the industry you're trying to organize. How can workers most easily get involved in the union? How can workers most easily get information about the union? Does the party, does whoever you're organizing with need to make union education about the union and get it to the workers, right? Like if a good thing for us to do in my area where there's a lot of John Deere plants would be like to educate those workers or do some kind of information for them about how their union actually works, right? How does it actually operate? How can you get involved? What does it do? What is the history of the union? Is the union the reason you have healthcare today? And what do you do to make your life better going forward? How do you use this this vehicle of class struggle, which is really what a union is? So teach people how it works, teach yourself how it works. And then, yeah, because you can't use the union if you don't know how it works. It makes perfect sense when my buddy describes it to me. But then it's like, you don't think to teach people that, right? We talk about theory and class struggle and imperialism and all these things. And yes, these are great things. But you don't think to research, union bureaucracy or how a union is structured or what are the important unionized plants in your area, right? What are the local local systems of economic production in our area? Are they unionized or not? And can we help them get unionized or teach the unionized workers, how to, or help the unionized workers, I shouldn't say teach, help the unionized workers fight for their own interests and to make their struggle political as well. So, yeah, sorry, I know it's not great. I know it's not great advice, but, it's not a great situation we're in here in the U.S. Like I said, when we were talking about that, the strikes that have been going on are being threatened in the U.K. Even the U.K., like they're much more in touch with their labor history. It's much easier to unionize. The unions haven't been decimated in the last 40 years of neoliberalism, the same way that the U.S. unions have been. So, there's a ton of work to be done. And a lot of our work is like the most basic shit you could imagine. How does the union work? What is a union? Do you have the right to join a union? Things like this, because Americans don't know these things a lot of the time. So, all right. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out. I hadn't considered a lot of this. Okay, good. Thank you. I'm glad I could help. This is all from, don't thank me. Thank my buddy Alex, who's in a major trade union, fighting the good fight. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for being a mod, Were Pilgrim, and all the other mods. Jacob, Cobra Commander, love y'all. Peace.